Evil monsters launch a brutal assault on humanity, overwhelming humans with sheer force. The people try to flee, but they are far too fragile against such overpowered foes. Amid the chaos, a monstrous figure breaks through the battlefield and enters a new zone, only to find another fearsome, armored monster locked in combat with a lone warrior. This warrior, a white-haired hero, unleashes everything he has in a desperate fight. Blow after blow, he strikes with fury, but the armored monster counters every attack with ease. Eventually, the hero is defeated. He is revealed to be Eos, the Empire's strongest swordsman. As Eos fades away, he acknowledges the terrifying power of his opponent, the Death Knight of Hell, who stands tall with his massive blade, watching silently as Eos vanishes. Suddenly, a sharp crack appears across the Death Knight's helmet, splitting it in half. As the helmet falls to the ground, the Death Knight clutches his head in agony. His glowing red eyes burn with pain, but then they shift. His original eyes return, and it seems he has regained his lost consciousness. His entire body begins to tremble uncontrollably. The scene cuts to another section of the battlefield. The Helios Empire's once proud flag now lies in flames. A towering monster surveys the destruction with satisfaction, pleased to have finally brought the so-called cursed empire to its knees. Fires rage across the capital. Amidst the carnage, the monster declares that revenge only grows sweeter with time. He turns around to face the captured king of Helios, who is now imprisoned by skeletal creatures. The monster, revealing himself as the Archlich Dorgo, mocks the king and asks if he can possibly comprehend the joy he feels after waiting 1,000 years to witness the end of mankind. King Howard Adel Light sheds tears as he confronts Dorgo, crying out over the massacre of his people. In desperation, he curses Dorgo, calling him a demon fit only for hell. But Dorgo simply laughs, amused by Howard's feeble resistance. As the king's words die out, Dorgo turns his attention to a ceremonial platform and announces his intention to proceed with his coronation. Hearing this enrages Howard even more. The thought of a monster like Dorgo being crowned emperor is too much to bear. But Dorgo relishes the moment. With dramatic flair, he strikes a triumphant pose and proclaims that, as the first being in history to unify the entire continent, he alone deserves the title of emperor. Howard, devastated, trembles in silent defeat, realizing he has no power left to resist. Just then, a group of elite monsters arrive and kneel before Dorgo. These are the Demon Lords, powerful beings who have sworn loyalty to him. Dorgo praises their contributions and then turns to the Death Knight, instructing him to retrieve the imperial crown. The Death Knight retrieves the crown while the Demon Lords applaud. Dorgo beams with pride and once again praises the Death Knight, declaring him the most loyal of all. No one, he says, has done more to secure his rise to power. Dorgo then wonders aloud how such loyalty should be rewarded. But the Death Knight remains silent. A beat of stillness follows. Then Dorgo, almost laughing to himself, admits it was foolish to ask. After all, the Death Knight is his slave, and serving him is reward enough. Before Dorgo can finish his thought, the Death Knight suddenly throws the crown into the air. Everyone's attention shifts upward. In one swift motion, the Death Knight slashes the crown in two, shocking the entire court of Demon Lords. Reacting quickly, Dorgo casts a protective barrier, while the Demon Lords leap in to defend him. But it's too late. The Death Knight unleashes a strange, powerful strike that breaks through their defenses and lands a blow on Dorgo himself. Staggered and stunned, Dorgo demands to know what the Death Knight is doing. He never gave such an order. Then, to his disbelief, the Death Knight begins to speak. He reveals that he has finally regained control over his own will. Dorgo, visibly shaken, can't believe what he's hearing. He had erased the knight's consciousness entirely. Or so he thought. But the Death Knight explains that while it may have seemed that way, he was never truly gone. His mind had remained, trapped, silent, watching everything unfold from within his own body. And now, at long last, he's ready to fight back. Dorgo couldn't believe what he was witnessing, but then he admitted that the Death Knight was truly his greatest creation. With a smirk, Dorgo told the Death Knight he would allow him to roam freely, at least until he figured out a way to take back control. The Demon Lords launched an attack, but the Death Knight stood perfectly still. In the next moment, a single devastating strike from him sent all the demon lords flying, defeating them instantly. Dorgo was stunned. The Death Knight had overpowered them with just one blow. Realizing the threat he now faced, Dorgo summoned thousands of undead soldiers. They charged toward the Death Knight, but he uttered a single word, and every undead froze in place. With a simple gesture of his hand, the Death Knight crushed them all instantly. Dorgo began to tremble. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He had created a being whose power now rivaled that of a god. Understanding that he stood no chance in a direct fight, Dorgo tried to reason with him. He feigned empathy, claiming that he might have done the same had he been in the Death Knight's position. But Dorgo still had a backup plan. Even if his physical body was destroyed, he could transfer his soul to a spare vessel, and from there, regain control over the Death Knight once again. However, the Death Knight revealed something terrifying. During the time he was trapped inside his body, he had devised 100 ways to kill Dorgo. He then assumed a battle stance, blue energy swirling around him, which immediately alarmed Dorgo. The Death Knight continued, saying he had developed a new sword art, one capable of taking down not just the body, but the soul itself. It was a technique he had created solely to take revenge on Dorgo. Dorgo was shaken, though he tried to convince himself that such a technique couldn't possibly exist. But before he could escape, the Death Knight struck. At first, Dorgo didn't understand what had happened. His body seemed intact. A flicker of hope sparked within him, making him believe the soul-cutting technique had failed. But then his eyes widened, and a dark, his soul, began rising from his body and into the sky. The Death Knight watched in silence. Soon, Dorgo's entire form exploded, leaving behind only the skull of his head. The Death Knight walked over, stepped on it, and crushed it, muttering, "Go to hell." Watching all of this was King Howard, frozen in fear, shaking as he tried to make sense of the chaos unfolding before him. The Death Knight, exhausted, finally allowed himself a moment of peace. The battle was over. Now, only one task remained. He picked up his sword and raised it high, voicing his desire to see his family again, to apologize for everything he had done. The scene shifted to a memory, a time when the Death Knight killed his own family. He asked them for forgiveness. Then, without hesitation, he stabbed himself. Everything went black. But then he heard a voice, a soft, familiar one, calling his name. Damien. He opened his eyes. His sister was standing beside him, asking why he had fallen asleep outside. Damien, stunned, thanked God that he was able to see her again, even if only before falling into hell. But then, something seemed strange. His sister looked far too young. She laughed at his reaction, teasing him by asking if he was trying to flatter her so she'd defend him when their father got angry. She promised she would, but urged him to come inside before it started to rain, warning that he'd catch a cold. She hurried off toward the house. Damien stood up slowly, watching her with a mixture of awe and confusion. He looked at his hands, realizing he was in his younger body. Something was different. He remembered destroying their family mansion with his own hands. Was this all a dream? Still dazed, he spotted a wooden stick nearby. He picked it up and approached a large stone. If this was a dream, the stick would break or do nothing. But if it was real, he took a stance and struck the stone with the stick. The stone shattered. Damien froze. Then his face contorted, not with fear, but with overwhelming emotion. He began laughing uncontrollably, tears streaming down his cheeks, his body trembling. He had returned to the past, and this time, he had a chance to make things right. Damien had many talents when he lived with his family, though none were the kind that brought pride. Once, he was kicked out of a tavern for brawling, causing disgrace to his family's reputation. It seemed Damien had a knack for staining the family's honor. On another occasion, while he slept peacefully in his room, his brother stormed in to confront him. Damien had gotten into a fight with the young son of Marquis Ryanbloom. As a result, their sister had been dragged by the Marquis's carriage, leaving her injured and in tears. It was clear Damien also had a talent for endangering the family's future. Their mother once came to him in tears, asking why he had taken out a massive loan against the family's estate. It seemed Damien was also gifted at squandering their fortune. Eventually, after so many incidents, his father finally lost his patience. He ordered Damien to leave the mansion, Damien didn't say a word. He turned to go, but before he could leave, his sister met him at the entrance. She held out some money and handed it to him with a smile, telling him to find happiness, despite all the pain he had caused her. Damien was stunned. Even after everything, she was still trying to help him. Trembling, he took the money and ran out of the mansion. That day, it felt less like leaving and more like escaping. For the first time in his life, Damien came to understand what guilt and shame truly were. He cried as he ran, overwhelmed by the weight in his heart. Now, Damien sat beneath the shade of a tree, trying to make sense of it all. Before he died, he had wished for just one chance to apologize to his family. But he never imagined he would actually return to the past. Looking up at the sky, he wondered if it was a divine miracle. His hands trembled, his body still affected by the powerful skill he had used earlier. That technique was called Shattering Wave, a devastating move that amplified the shock of a strike sevenfold. When Damien was the Death Knight, he had fought an enemy known for this skill. It was infamous for shattering fortress walls. Damien had acquired it by defeating that knight and mastering the technique himself. As he reflected, a loud voice interrupted his thoughts. Black-haired boy came running toward him, panting from exhaustion. Damien studied him, trying to recall who he was. He guessed his name, Victor, and surprisingly, he was right. Victor, still catching his breath, asked why Damien was still outside when his sister, Louise, had told him to come in. He also warned that Damien's father was furious and that he should hurry back. Hearing this, Damien blinked in confusion. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. Victor looked at him, baffled. "Are you seriously asking that?" Later, back inside Viscount Haskins' estate, Damien's father stood ready to strike him with a sword. Damien narrowly dodged the blow, but his father wasn't done. He lunged again, only to be held back by Louise and their mother. "Why did you get kicked out of a tavern for brawling?" his father shouted. Marilda, Damien's mother, and Louise tried to calm him down, but he was furious. His son had once again tarnished the family's honor. Paul Osborne Haskin, the head of the household, yelled at them to let him go so he could deal with Damien himself. But Damien wasn't afraid. He knew this moment. He had lived it before. He had truly returned to the past. His father continued shouting, but Marilda and Louise clung to him, begging him to think rationally. Amid the chaos, Damien found himself smiling softly. As strange as it was, he missed this. It had been so long since he had heard his father scold him. Suddenly, all three, Paul, Marilda, and Louise, fell silent. They stared at Damien, who was trembling and crying. Seeing this, Marilda and Louise turned on Paul. "You've gone too far," they scolded. Paul slowly sheathed his sword, then turned to Damien. "Well, what excuse do you have this time?" Damien looked up. "I have no excuse." Paul blinked, thrown off by the answer. He had expected the usual deflections and justifications. Damien was always pathetic, always trying to weasel his way out of consequences. To hear him take full responsibility was shocking. Damien already knew what his father thought of him, but hearing it said so directly still stung. Damien continued, admitting that his actions had deeply stained the honor of his family. He took full responsibility and said there was no excuse for what he had done. Paul, however, remained skeptical. To him, Damien was still hopeless, just talking big again. He told Damien that he wouldn't let things slide, no matter how remorseful he now claimed to be. But Damien surprised him. Calmly, he said he would resolve the matter himself. Without waiting for a response, Damien turned and opened the exit door. "I'll go and fix the mess I made," he said. "And after that, I'll accept whatever punishment you decide." Paul, Marilda, and Louise were left speechless, trying to process what had just happened. Paul even wondered aloud if Damien had hit his head too hard during one of his past beatings. Later that day, Damien arrived in the bustling commercial city of Landward. He stopped in front of a particular house guarded by two rough-looking men who resembled street thugs. From a hidden spot, Damien and Victor watched them closely. Victor, clearly nervous, asked if Damien was seriously planning to go inside. He mentioned the rumors that the place was backed by a criminal organization. "You're going to get yourself into serious trouble," Victor warned. Damien started walking forward. "If you're scared, you can go back to the mansion," he said casually. But Victor followed him, saying, "I can't just run away and leave you alone. If things go wrong, we both run together." Damien smiled slightly. "Don't worry. I'm just going to apologize politely to the owner and leave. Nothing's going to happen. He assured Victor that he would handle the situation cleanly. Victor stopped and sighed. I really hope it goes well, he muttered. As Damien approached the door, he couldn't help but wonder how he had returned to the past. He still had no answers, but one thing was clear. He didn't want to repeat his mistakes. He had decided to make things right, starting now. When he reached the guards, they immediately recognized him. Isn't this the noble brat we warned not to come back? One of them asked. Damien didn't remember the details clearly, but their faces did seem familiar. He bowed slightly. I'm here to apologize to your boss for what I did last time. For a moment, the guards were silent. Then they burst out laughing. One said he would pass the message along, while the other mocked Damien for pretending to act dignified just because he was a noble. They laughed cruelly, calling him the scoundrel eldest son of a disgraceful family, and went so far as to insult his sister. Then, one of the guards casually slapped Damien across the face and sneered, I might accept your apology if you introduce us to your sister. The other guard chuckled. Stop it, you'll make him cry again. Damien clenched his fists. He had come with the intention of apologizing and resolving things peacefully, but he quickly realized he had overestimated himself. Trying to act polite and composed was too difficult, especially when they insulted his family. Without a word, Damien reached for the knife one of the guards had been carelessly playing with and snatched it from him. The laughter stopped immediately. I really thought I could come here, apologize, and leave, Damien said coldly. The guards backed away, alarmed. Put the knife down now. But Damien had made up his mind. In one swift motion, he struck at the guard with the knife and injures his hand. The man screamed in pain, collapsing to the ground. The second guard quickly drew his sword, but Damien took a stance, ready to fight. His eyes were sharp, unwavering. From a distance, Victor watched the entire scene unfold. Horrified, he began to cry, overwhelmed by fear and disbelief. As Victor watched the fight unfold, more bystanders began to gather, curious about the commotion. Victor, however, was deeply worried about Damien's safety. One of the guards, clearly agitated, tried to intimidate Damien. Do you even know who you're messing with? Damien remained calm. Not really, he replied. And I don't care. Now finish what you started. Sweating nervously, the guard raised his fist to reveal a snake tattoo. You're picking a fight with the Black Serpent organization. No one who crosses us walks away unharmed. The mention of the name triggered a memory in Damien. The Black Serpent was a growing underground organization expanding its influence across landward. The tavern Damien had approached was one of their affiliated businesses. He remembered how, during a past visit, he had complained about being outrageously overcharged. In response, the guards had beaten and humiliated him publicly, forcing him to apologize and pay up. As the memory resurfaced, Damien suddenly laughed, realizing he had been the one who truly deserved an apology. His laughter confused the guard. What's so funny? The guard growled, stepping forward and preparing to attack. You nobles think you're untouchable, huh? We'll show you otherwise. The guard charged, but Damien smoothly dodged the blow. As the man stumbled, Damien swept his leg out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground. Before the guard could recover, Damien grabbed his leg. Eliminating a few of you won't be enough, Damien muttered. But, for my family's sake, I'll hold back. Despite that, Damien swiftly injures the guard foot, sending him screaming in agony. The other injured guard wailed alongside him. Just as Damien thought it was over, a group of reinforcements arrived. More guards, all armed. Their leader stepped forward. You're not from around here, are you? What crew are you with? I'm not with any group, Damien replied coolly. I came to apologize to the owner, but ended up receiving an apology instead. He then added, now be polite and lead me to the owner. I've got business with him. The leader, confused and irritated, dismissed Damien's words. If you won't come quietly, we'll drag you in, he threatened. He pointed at Damien and ordered his men to attack. Sighing, Damien took a deep breath, then exploded into action. In mere moments, he defeated them all. Their leader stood frozen in disbelief as his men groaned in pain, lying defeated on the ground. Damien stood before him, breathless and visibly exhausted. The effort had taken a toll on him. Still, Damien stepped forward and threatened the leader directly. The man pleading, please, I was wrong. Have mercy. But Damien didn't listen. He charged, and the leader fled in terror, crying as he ran. Damien caught up to him quickly and took him down. The scene shifted to the inside of a restaurant. People were unaware of the chaos outside. Then the tavern doors burst open. The guard captain stumbled inside, looking battered and shaken. I misjudged him, he stammered. A moment later, Damien stepped in behind him. With a cold tone, he said, "You should have listened when I was being nice." The room went silent. As the reality of the situation sank in, patrons scrambled to escape. Within seconds, the tavern was empty. Only Damien remained, walking forward with steady steps. It's finally over, he thought. One less nuisance to deal with. Then the tavern owner arrived, storming into the room to investigate the noise. He was furious. "Where are all my guards?" he demanded. Damien turned to face him, already suspecting who he was. "You must be Taver Nauner," he said. Taver blinked. "And who are you?" "If you're asking about the delinquents outside, I've already taken care of them," Damien replied. Taver rushed to the entrance and shocked to see the Black Serpent members defeated. "Who are you?" he asked again, now more cautiously. "And why did you cause such a scene in my business?" "I'm Damien," he answered plainly. Recognition dawned on Taver's face. "You're the noble of this town." Damien told Taver that he wasn't there to cause trouble. He had come to demand an apology. Taver raised an eyebrow and asked him to elaborate. Damien explained how the prices for drinks at the tavern had been absurdly high, and when he had dared to complain, Taver's men had beaten him and thrown him out onto the street. The incident not only humiliated him, because of that moment, both he and his family had lost far too much. Taver, unimpressed, responded with mockery. He feigned confusion about what Damien and his family had supposedly lost, and assumed Damien was talking about something as trivial as family honor. Smirking, he said, "From where I stand, there wasn't any honor left for Baron Haskin anyway." Those words struck a nerve. Damien clenched his fists, struggling to keep his composure, but his anger boiled over. Taver, noticing the reaction, picked up a wooden staff and sneered. "You're a fool if you think I'd ever apologize to someone like you. Quit this pathetic noble act and pay for disrupting my business." Damien, instead of getting angry, laughed. "I was going to forgive you," he said calmly. "All you had to do was apologize nicely." His expression changed. "But if this is how you want to handle it, that's fine by me." In one swift motion, Damien leaped into the air, aiming to strike Taver and make him pay for every insult and humiliation. But just before he could land the blow, someone intercepted his attack. Damien was caught completely off guard. As he landed back on the ground, he immediately sensed energy radiating from the man who had blocked him. The stranger stepped forward, now standing between Damien and Taver. Taver smirked from behind his new ally. "Perfect timing," he said with a grin. Damien stood and dusted himself off, eyeing the man cautiously. "You're pretty skilled," he said. "Doesn't seem like someone like you would be working in a place like this." The man remained silent. Damien narrowed his eyes. "So, tell me, why would a knight defend someone like Taver?" Knights are individuals who dedicate their lives to the path of chivalry. There are 3 ranks among them: trainee, apprentice knight, and the highest, formal knight. These ranks are determined based on the level of training and mastery each knight has attained. Formal knights, in particular, possess the ability to freely wield aura. Their strength is legendary. They can take down monsters and mountains with a single blow. In other words, formal knights are beings of near superhuman power. Back at the tavern, Taver burst out laughing and mocked Damien cruelly. He revealed that Ted was the beloved apprentice knight of the Black Serpent organization's boss, which meant, according to Taver, that Damien had no chance of leaving alive. Damien, however, remained composed. He noted that Ted was only an apprentice, which explained the faint aura he sensed earlier. This surprised Ted. Damien was able to detect aura that hadn't even fully materialized. Damien then remarked that it made sense for someone like Ted to end up in a place like this. "You must have lacked the talent," Damien said coldly. "That's why you couldn't become a formal knight. You were expelled." Taver, uninterested in Damien's taunts, turned to Ted. "So, what reward do you want once you finish him off?" Ted, furious from Damien's words, clenched his teeth. "We'll talk about rewards later," he said, and launched himself at Damien, determined to silence him. Damien narrowly dodged the strike, but Ted recovered quickly and attacked again. Damien continued to evade with skill, noting how precise Ted's sword movements were despite the force behind them. Still, Damien was growing tired. His body was reaching its limit. He knew he'd need to find a way to increase his mana once he returned home. Ted, growing more frustrated with every missed strike, finally prepared a powerful finishing move. "Block this, if you can," he shouted. A greenish energy began to surge from his body as he assumed his stance. Damien's eyes narrowed. He recognized it immediately. Ted was using a secret ultimate technique. As the blade approached, Damien closed his eyes to focus. He had no choice but to respond with his own secret technique. At that moment, the scene shifted, years into the past. A lone soldier was taking down his opponents on the battlefield. His name was Salmongoe, the master of the Sword of Death, a feared and ruthless killer. After eliminating the last of the human soldiers, Salmongoe turned to face Damien, who was the Death Knight at that time. "Enough of the silent act," Salmongoe growled. "Scream if you don't want to die." But Damien, completely under the control of necromantic magic, remained silent. The lack of reaction unsettled Salmongoe. "You don't understand me?" he asked with a twisted grin. "No problem. That just means I get to kill one more today." As a parting gift, Salmongoe decided to use his secret technique. "Humans are made mostly of water," he said. "Once you understand that, you can defeat them easily." With that, he unleashed his infamous move, Calamity. Though it was just a wooden blade, he used it to take down the Death Knight. Salmongoe laughed triumphantly. "You should have run when you had the chance." But his joy was short-lived. He suddenly sensed something. Salmongoe turned around, horrified, only to see the Death Knight have healed himself. "He's not human," Salmongoe muttered. "He's undead." In the very next moment, Salmongoe's thoughts were silenced as the Death Knight struck. The Death Knight takes him down with a single strike. The scene returned to the present, where Ted was now the one falling. He collapsed to the ground, defeated. For Damien, it was always the same. Every enemy who challenged him met their end, wearing that same expression. Ever since Damien became a Death Knight, his abilities had far surpassed even his own expectations. Among his most fearsome traits was the ability to absorb and replicate his opponent's techniques and combat states, making them entirely his own. After witnessing Ted's complete defeat, Taver was overcome with fear. His body trembled uncontrollably, and in a panic, he dropped to his knees, sweating profusely. Bowing before Damien, he offered an apology for daring to tarnish the honor of House Haskin. As a token of regret, he handed over a small sum of money, hoping to soothe Damien's wounded pride. Damien stared at the coins for a moment. He remembered that his original purpose for coming to the tavern had been to apologize, but given his family's financial circumstances, he had no reason to refuse the compensation. With a commanding tone, Damien declared, "This isn't enough, but I'll let it slide." He then turned around and called for Victor, who had been hiding at the doorway and watching everything unfold. "Come in and take everything," Damien instructed. Victor obeyed immediately, stepping inside and gathering all the money into a large bag. He was still in shock. Had he not seen Damien's strength with his own eyes, he never would have believed it. The swordsmanship Damien displayed was completely unfamiliar. Victor couldn't help but wonder when Damien had learned such powerful techniques. Once they had collected everything, Damien and Victor exited the tavern. Taver and his remaining guards bowed again, respectfully wishing Damien a safe return home. As they walked, Victor glanced at the bag in awe. "It's my first time seeing so much treasure in one place," he muttered in disbelief. Taver watched them silently from behind, masking the rage boiling inside him. Though he bowed and remained outwardly submissive, his thoughts were seething. "I'll get every last coin back from that brat," he vowed. "The Black Serpent's boss will hear about this." Just as Taver began plotting, Damien stopped. Without a word, he turned around, drew his knife, and in a swift motion, strikes at Taver's ear, using the Calamity technique, a secret skill of incredible precision and power. Taver collapsed to the ground, screaming in agony. Standing over him, Damien spoke coldly. "Tell the Black Serpent that if they even think about laying a hand on my family, no matter how small the threat, I won't stand by quietly." Taver looked up at him with fury in his eyes, gritting his teeth in pain. "We'll see," he thought. "We'll see what becomes of you." The sun began to set on the horizon as Damien and Victor made their way back to the mansion. Though the weight of the past still lingered, Damien knew that doing a single good deed for his family wasn't enough to erase the harm he had once caused. But in this new life, with a second chance in his hands, he had made a quiet vow to himself. He would no longer bring shame to his family. Meanwhile, in the Lion Bloom Marquette, a nobleman stood before a mirror, adjusting his appearance. With a strange glint in his eyes, he asked his brother, "Have you heard they say love always comes with pain?" His brother raised an eyebrow. "Where's this coming from? You look like you're about to duel someone." The man chuckled darkly and replied, "No duels today. I'm just finally going to find love." At the Haskin mansion, Damien and Victor made their way toward the office of Damien's father. Yawning, Damien remarked, "It's been a while since I slept so soundly." Damien chuckled. "Well, everything worked out in the end. Even if our original objective changed a bit, we were handsomely rewarded, and more importantly, the rumors are going to spread." Victor raised a brow. "Rumors?" "Of course," Damien replied. "Word will spread across town that someone messed with the Baron's eldest son at a tavern and got wrecked. No one will dare to take our family lightly anymore," he added with a slight grin. "And maybe the image of the delinquent eldest son will improve, just a little." Hearing Damien speak so candidly about his reputation, Victor was taken aback. So, he's actually self-aware, he thought. Though trying to stay upbeat, Victor's voice still carried concern. "Things might have gone well this time, but I'm worried about the Black Serpent. You didn't just take down some thugs, you eliminated a good number of their men, including their apprentice knight." Damien waved it off confidently. No matter how bold the Black Serpent organization is, they wouldn't dare openly attack a noble household. And even if they try something, I'll stop them. So relax. Victor nodded slowly, still uneasy. "Well, if anything, your swordsmanship isn't normal. Where did you even learn to fight like that?" At that, Damien started to sweat. "I trained wherever I could," he said vaguely. "Somehow I got good." Before Victor could press further, a loud voice boomed down the hall. "Damien!" It was Paul, Damien's father, running toward him, worry etched across his face. "Where have you been since yesterday? You didn't get into another incident, did you?" Paul grabbed Damien's shoulders, clearly bracing for bad news. But Damien calmly turned toward Victor and replied, "Don't worry, father. Like I said, I went to clean up the mess I made." Paul looked confused. "What are you even talking about?" Without missing a beat, Damien gestured toward Victor. Victor opened the large bag, revealing stacks of money and land documents. Paul and Marilda gasped in disbelief. Marilda, overwhelmed, nearly collapsed. "With this much," she cried, "we can finally pay the overdue wages." Damien explained, "I went back to the tavern where I got thrown out. Turns out there was a billing mistake. The owner felt bad and gave me this as an apology." Paul squinted suspiciously. "Can I really believe that?" "You can trust me," Damien said confidently. Marilda, still amazed, nodded. "I believe it. There's no other way Damien could have come across this much money." Damien turned to Victor. "If you don't believe me, ask Victor. He was with me the whole time." Then, with a playful blink, he asked, "Right, Victor?" Without hesitation, Victor replied, "It's true." Satisfied, Paul and Marilda exchanged glances and finally accepted Damien's explanation. Marilda smiled warmly. "You're amazing, Damien." Victor watched the scene silently. Every time he opens his mouth, it's a lie, he thought. The scene shifted. Damien now ran through the forest, panting heavily. He stopped and leaned against a tree to catch his breath. "I haven't even run that far," he muttered, frustrated. "And I'm already exhausted." Though he had so much to do, his current physical condition limited him severely. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial. "Good thing I got my hands on this," he said. It was a tonic he received from Taver, a stamina and vitality enhancer from the School of Alchemy. Curious, Damien recalled asking Taver about it. "The School of Alchemy?" he had said. Taver had explained that alchemists were a specialized group known for creating powerful tonics. The one Damien held was so valuable, it was often traded for gemstones of equal weight. Remembering that, Damien smiled. Finally, he thought, a little luck on my side. Damien drank the tonic, and soon his body surged with renewed vitality. Strength coursed through him as the powerful effects of the potion took hold. He exhaled with relief. He understood something clearly. If he wanted to become stronger, he needed to address his greatest weakness first, his stamina. Only by overcoming this could he ascend once again to the level he once held in his past life, a realm where he stood above all living beings. His thoughts turned to Dorgo, the necromancer who would one day unleash an army of undead upon the world. Though that event was still years away, Damien knew he had to act now. If he wanted to protect his family from what was to come, he had to become powerful enough to eliminate Dorgo before that future unfolded. Only then could he ensure their happiness. With new resolve, he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began running again, committing himself fully to the path ahead. This time, too, he thought, I will defeat Dorgo. The scene shifted to a tall, ominous building cloaked in darkness. Its walls were adorned with snake insignias, marking it as the suspected main hideout of the Black Serpent organization. Inside, a man grunted in frustration and dismissed Ted, calling him a foolish despite having been their most skilled mercenary. This man was Cedric Walker, the ruthless boss of the Black Serpents. One of his underlings cautiously asked if they should tend to Ted's injuries, but Cedric barked out an order instead: throw Ted out. Why waste resources? We can always pay someone else to get their hands dirty. Groaning in pain, Ted struggled to his feet, his body barely holding together. Hearing movement, Cedric turned around and mockingly clapped. Still got some strength left, huh? Go get patched up. Maybe I'll hire you again someday. But Ted was seething with rage. Glaring at Cedric, he used the last of his strength to lunge at him in defiance. Just as his strike was about to land, a dark mana comes out of nowhere and wrapped around Ted's leg, binding him midair. It coiled around him, completely immobilizing his body. A cloaked figure emerged from the shadows. Consider that your first job, he said calmly. Cedric nodded. Show me what you can do. Ted writhed, shouting at the cloaked man to let him go. But the figure began chanting a spell, and the black mana binding Ted started to shift, transforming into monsters. Realizing what was about to happen, Ted's defiance turned into terror. Please, Cedric, help me, he screamed. But Cedric didn't care, and the monsters took down Ted. Cedric grimaced. The cloaked man looked at him. Are you satisfied? Cedric paused, then muttered, Yes, but keep it cleaner next time. Understood, the man replied. Now what's the next job? That's why I called you, Cedric said, lowering his voice. Someone's been interfering with the Black Serpent. His name is Damien. He's a noble, so we can't go after him openly. But I want him hurt badly. The worse it is, the more I'll pay. Cedric handed over a pouch of advance payment. The cloaked man took it. Smirking, he states that, you can count on me. The scene shifts to Damien, deep into his weight training. After completing his final set, he checks his muscles in the mirror and nods in satisfaction, impressed by the results. The tonic he had taken was clearly working. His stamina had improved noticeably in just a few days. Wiping sweat from his brow, Damien reached for his water bottle. Something feels off, he thought. It's been several days, but nothing's happened. He had been certain the Black Serpent organization would retaliate by now. As he drank, a sudden rustle came from the nearby bushes. Damien's instincts flared. Without hesitation, he rushed toward the sound, hand ready to grab and punish the intruder. But as he reached out, he froze. His hand was wrapped around the neck of none other than his younger brother, Abel. Realizing his mistake, Damien immediately let go. Abel dropped to the ground, coughing. You've gotten stronger, Abel muttered, adjusting his glasses. He took a deep breath and reached toward Abel. I didn't do that, he said, his voice low, filled with regret. I'm sorry, but Abel didn't respond with warmth. He looked away coldly. I didn't come here for an apology. Abel stood up and brushed off his clothes. I came because I heard from Father that you went to the tavern and got an apology. But when I asked around, I heard a fight broke out and several people were injured. So tell me, Damien, are you lying to the family again? Damien smiled and took a sip of water. It's true, he said calmly. I fought. I won. Abel's face turned red with fury. He jumped to his feet, storming toward Damien, pointing aggressively. You can't even fight. There's no way you beat anyone. His voice grew louder, his words sharper. Did you hire someone? Pay a mercenary? Are you trying to lie your way into the family's good graces again? Damien didn't flinch. He simply nodded. I did it myself. There was no hesitation, no guilt in his voice. Abel's hands trembled. He leaned in, eyes burning. Stop lying. You might fool the rest of the family, but not me. Never me. His voice cracked as he shouted. Don't bring more shame to our name. Father's always cleaning up after your messes. Just stop. Damien only smiled. Slowly, he reached out and patted Abel's head. Abel's always been like this, he thought. So serious. So honest. Always the one who cares most about the family. He kept patting gently. Don't worry. I won't tarnish the family name. Not anymore. Abel froze. For a second, he was stunned. Damien was treating him like a real older brother would. Annoyed and embarrassed, Abel swatted Damien's hand away, but Damien's arm didn't budge. It was too strong. Let go. Abel growled, gritting his teeth as he tried to pull Damien's hand away, to no effect. Damien just chuckled. I promise, Damien said again. No more trouble. Just then, Victor came sprinting toward them. His footsteps echoed through the hall, and his face was pale with fear. Damien, he shouted, breathless. Something really bad just happened. Damien and Abel exchanged a quick glance and ran after him without a word. They rushed down the hallway, Victor leading the way, until they burst through the living room doors. The moment they entered, they stopped dead in their tracks. Paul and Marilda were sitting on the couch. Between them sat a stranger, a man with neatly styled brown hair, calmly sipping tea. The room was thick with silence. The man looked up with a small smile and said, So, Damien's finally here. The man looked up and smiled, saying Damien had arrived at the perfect time. He was just telling the Viscount about what had happened at the banquet hall. He then apologized for showing up so suddenly, but explained that he had no choice since his father had learned of the incident. Damien's heart sank. He had a bad feeling something like this would happen, but in the chaos, he had forgotten one crucial detail. He had already crossed paths with Eowyn Lionbloom. Eowyn leaned back and casually asked Damien if he remembered what had happened at the last social gathering. Damien did remember. At that party, Eowyn had mocked him publicly, making fun of him, and even insulting his eyes. When Damien confronted him, Eowyn laughed it off and pretended to apologize in front of everyone, saying that Damien is imagining things. He told the crowd that he never said anything offensive. Then, as he leaned close to Damien's ear, he whispered cruelly, I did say it. But what are you going to do about it? Provoked beyond reason, Damien had punched Eowyn. Now, in hindsight, Damien regretted not holding back. He realized it had been strange at the time. Eowyn was a trained knight. How had he been hit so easily? A suspicion grew in Damien's mind. Was it all planned from the start? Eowyn, still smiling, turned to Paul, the Viscount, and offered a solution to the incident. He admitted he had admired Louise for a long time. Paul furrowed his brow. And what exactly are you trying to say? Eowyn straightened, his tone suddenly formal. I wish to marry Louise. His words shocked Marilda, Paul, and Abel, but Damien remained silent, already knowing this move too well. In his past life, Eowyn had taken advantage of their family's vulnerabilities in the same manipulative way. Damien remembered it clearly. Eowyn continued, explaining that if their families were joined in marriage, the incident could be treated as a private matter. That way, the disrespect Eowyn had suffered could be quietly overlooked. Paul listened to the proposal, then rejected it outright. Visibly irritated, Eowyn pressed further. She already has a fiancé, Paul added. She's in a committed relationship. But Eowyn cut him off. Then how will you and your family take responsibility for insulting me? Do you think the house of a mere Viscount can withstand the wrath of House Lionbloom? He leaned in slightly. So make your choice. Either your family suffers the consequences, or Louise becomes my wife. Paul hesitated. He knew full well that House Lionbloom was one of the most powerful noble families in the Apple Kingdom. But no matter how dire the situation, he couldn't allow his daughter to marry someone like Eowyn. Suddenly, Louise entered the room. I'll accept the marriage proposal, she said, her voice trembling but composed. Paul stood up in shock. Louise, what are you talking about? Abel quickly added. You shouldn't be the one to take responsibility for something Damien did. Tears welled in Damien's eyes. Louise was clearly afraid, shaking, but she forced a smile and nodded. It's fine. I'll do it. And just like that, Damien's worst fear was coming true, again. Even in this life, his sister would suffer because of him. Eowyn laughed, clapping his hands in amusement. You truly are a wise woman, Louise, he said smugly, walking toward her. I'll send someone soon to discuss the arrangements. But before he could take another step, Damien stepped in front of him, eyes glowing faintly red with fury. Eowyn raised an eyebrow and tapped Damien on the shoulder. Do you have something to say? Damien was seething inside. He knew what was at stake. If Eowyn married Louise, he would ruin her life. But Damien had promised himself he wouldn't cause more trouble. Still, this time, he couldn't stay silent. He whispered something so quietly that only Louise, standing nearby, heard it. Her eyes widened in shock. What was that? Eowyn asked smugly. Say it louder. The next moment, Damien's fist crashed into Eowyn's face, sending him stumbling back. Everyone froze. Damien stood tall, not flinching. I'm against this marriage, he said firmly. Completely. He had tried to endure it, for the sake of his sister, for the sake of the family. But enough was enough. No one was taking Louise's future from her, not this time. The scene shifts to Damien's past life, a time when Eowyn had already married Louise. One sunny day at the Haskin estate, servants rushed to Damien and informed him that Eowyn and Louise's carriage had arrived. A warm joy filled Damien's chest. It had been so long since he'd last seen his sister. Smiling brightly, he walked quickly toward the entrance, ready to welcome her. But the smile froze on his face. Eowyn was dragging Louise by the arm, shouting at her with a twisted expression of fury. I bring you to your family's house, and this is how you act, he yelled, completely indifferent to the watching eyes around him. Guilt surged through him like a rising tide. She's suffering because of the choices I made. Right then, Damien clenched his fists. Something inside him shattered. I will never forgive Eowyn. Back in the present, Damien stood before Eowyn with rage burning in his eyes. I am against the marriage proposal, he declared firmly. Eowyn staggered backward, collapsing to the ground. Everyone in the room was stunned. Hearing the commotion, Eowyn's knights rushed into the room with swords drawn. They quickly assessed the scene, Eowyn on the floor and Damien standing in front of him. Both knights drew their blades. Did you strike Lord Eowyn? One of them demanded. Damien calmly looked at them. He could tell they were personal knights of Eowyn. Eowyn rose slowly, laughing bitterly. You dare hit me? Not once, but twice? Then, drawing his own sword, he says, You struck my face. Do you have a death wish? One of his knights immediately stepped in front of him. Please, my lord, calm down. There are witnesses here. Let us handle this. But Eowyn, blinded by rage, snapped, I told you to move. Before the knight could respond, Eowyn struck him hard, sending him crashing into the wall. Louise and Abel gasped in horror. Abel began moving toward Damien, his voice tense. How do you plan to resolve this, Damien? Louise, realizing that Eowyn wouldn't let Damien off easily, tried to intervene. Stop, please. But Damien raised his hand, stopping her. It's all right, he said, his voice steady. I'll handle it. He didn't want Louise to sacrifice herself because of him again. Damien turned to Eowyn. Let's settle this with a duel. Eowyn raised an eyebrow. A duel? We'll fight with swords, Damien explained. If you win, I'll do whatever you say. But if I win, you forget everything that's happened so far. Eowyn scoffed. And why would I agree to that? What do I gain? Louise already accepted the proposal. Damien smiled coolly. Why are you dodging the challenge? Don't tell me. Are you afraid you'll lose to me? The taunt struck a nerve. Eowyn's face twisted with anger. His pride flared at the suggestion that Damien's earlier punch had been anything more than a lucky shot. With a twisted grin, he decided he would teach Damien a lesson and reclaim Louise in the process. Smiling wickedly, he raised his sword and accepted the challenge. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, the stage was set for the duel between Damien and Eowyn. Before the match began, Marilda approached Paul and pleaded with him to stop the duel. Paul, however, remained firm. If Damien has this much confidence, then he must have something planned, he said. And if not, all we can do is hope for a miracle. Hearing this, Abel shook his head silently. In his mind, there was no miracle to hope for. Eowyn was already a fully fledged knight, and Damien stood no chance. As Eowyn drew his sword, Abel's doubts grew. He believed his older brother was walking into certain defeat. Eowyn looked at Damien. Shall we begin? He asked mockingly. Then, with a smirk, he added, But how do you plan to fight without a sword? Damien replied calmly, Don't worry. A A single fork will be more than enough. Hearing that Damien intended to duel with a fork made Paul, Marilda, Louise, and Abel visibly lose hope. Louise even grew dizzy, imagining how badly this could end. Eowyn burst out laughing. "You've gone mad with fear," he roared. "But don't worry, I won't hold back." Without warning, Eowyn charged forward. Damien swiftly dodged the strike, leaving Eowyn momentarily stunned. Regaining his composure, Eowyn activated his sword art, Lion's Roar, Fierce Sword, and began swinging his blade with immense force. But as the dust cleared, Damien stood still, completely unharmed. Eowyn's knights stepped back in shock, one of them gasping, "What just happened?" Even Eowyn gritted his teeth in disbelief. He had seen it. Damien had dodged every attack effortlessly, his movements blurring like a phantom, and he hadn't even broken a sweat. Meanwhile, Damien observed Eowyn with calm intensity. Inside, he was pleased. Eowyn was rattled, losing focus. Damien felt proud. All the stamina and training he'd put in were finally paying off. In fact, to Damien, the duel was already won. He had studied and memorized the Lionbloom sword style from start to finish. Eowyn was no longer a mystery to him. His thoughts drifted to Michael Lionbloom, Eowyn's older brother, a powerful and terrifying knight. Damien remembered his brutal battle with Michael before the regression. Compared to him, Eowyn wasn't even close. Just then, Damien sensed something strange. Who was now building red energy around his body, preparing to strike again. This time, Eowyn shouted, "You won't be able to dodge." As crimson aura enveloped Eowyn's blade, Damien recognized the technique instantly and knew it wouldn't be easy to avoid. The pressure around them intensified. Eowyn charged like a storm. Damien gripped his fork tightly, his instincts sharpening. "Now's the moment," he thought. In that split second, Damien activated the Sword Saint's technique. Their weapons clashed, Damien's fork against Eowyn's sword, and a surge of powerful energy erupted from the collision. Abel and Louise gasped, stunned by the sheer force of the impact. But the most shocked of all was Eowyn. Not only had Damien blocked his ultimate attack with a fork, he remained completely unharmed. Eowyn's hands trembled in fear. Before he could react, Damien slid the fork along the length of Eowyn's sword. An opening had appeared. With flawless timing, Damien unleashed his secret technique. 10,000 flows returned to origin. The force of it disarmed Eowyn. Damien comes forward, approaching Erwin with his fork, intending to deliver his last attack, which lands on Erwin's neck. Erwin is stunned. Everyone gasps as Erwin's guards call out to him. He falls back to the ground and screams, while Damien, still standing with his fork, thinks that killing him would not be enough for what he did, but decides to let it go for the sake of his family. He then says it is clear who the winner is and asks Erwin if he is fine with it. Erwin, groaning in pain, watches as Damien speaks. Damien says that according to the deal, Erwin should leave. The Haxon family is having breakfast at the dining table. Damien stands up, grateful for the food, and says it is time for his morning training before leaving, while the others continue eating. Mrs. Haxon asks her husband if he will talk to Damien about yesterday. Both of them notice Abel murmuring in shock that he still cannot believe his brother became strong enough to defeat Erwin so easily. Mrs. Haxon feels concerned and asks her husband to talk to Damien. Mr. Haxon urges the others to stop and suggests not to bother Damien, saying he will let them know in time. Mrs. Haxon still feels uneasy, while Louise tries to calm Abel. Mr. Haxon admits to himself that he is curious as well, but he doesn't want to ask. His son seems intimidating. Somewhere else, Damien is preparing for endurance training. He attaches a 10-kilogram sandbag to his legs. Just as he is about to go out, his sister calls him, and he approaches her. She is happy to find him and cautiously asks about yesterday. Damien immediately bows his head, apologizing to her. He admits he acted roughly and put her in a difficult position. He says he should have apologized earlier and promises that he will not let anything like that happen again. Louise quickly explains that it is not what she meant and places her hand on his shoulder. He stands up as she thanks him. She admits that she felt scared and chose Erwin, but her heart didn't want to. Damien looks at her worriedly, beginning to understand what she means. Louise continues, saying that when he stood up for her, she felt both happy and apologetic, and that is why she came to thank him. Damien's eyes widen, and he admits that he is the one who should be thankful to her for always being there for him. Louise doesn't fully understand, but he turns back and says he will be going. She calls him again and asks him to take something. He turns back and realizes it is their father's favorite possession. She confirms it, telling him their father gave it to him and suggested he use it for training. Damien takes it, confused. Louise explains that their father is not good at expressing himself, but he loves him, and he also told her to deliver his message. Since Damien is from a Viscounty, he should always use a sword instead of a fork again. Damien looks at the sword, seeing his father's face in his sister's words. He pulls the sword from its scabbard and raises it high, thanking his father in his heart. Elsewhere, his father sneezes while cleaning his own sword, wondering about the sudden breeze. That night, 2 guards are standing at the estate entrance when a dark energy approaches. One of the guards yawns as the dark energy takes the form of a figure and knocks both of them out. The cloaked figure enters the estate. Inside, everyone is asleep in their rooms, but the figure slips into Louise's room, where she is resting. The cloaked man pauses, amused at seeing a beautiful young lady. He admits he was sent there on behalf of Black Snake, but considers himself surprisingly lucky. As he begins to approach her, a voice calls out from behind, and he freezes. Damien, with his sword in hand, stands at the door filled with anger. He demands to know the man's business there. Damien explains that he came because he sensed a strange energy and found someone suspicious. The cloaked man grits his teeth, wondering why his magic, which was supposed to put everyone to sleep, did not work on Damien. He didn't even sense Damien's presence until he came close. He quickly uses his magic and launches an attack at Damien, but Damien swiftly dodges. The cloaked man asks who he is. Damien replies that he should be the one asking, since this is his house. The cloaked man then tries to confirm if he is Damien Haxon. Damien confirms, then demands to know his identity and what he did to his sister. Servants outside hear the noise. One of them says it is coming from young Lady Louise's room, and they start to approach. The cloaked man thinks the servants must have been awakened by the earlier explosion. He tells Damien that facing too many people at once would be troublesome, so he decides to flee. With his dark energy, he escapes through the window. Damien tries to catch him, but fails, watching as the cloaked man lands on the ground and runs off. Damien notices the strange energy the man left behind. In the morning, the servants in the stable discover that the prized horse is dead. They panic, worrying about how to explain the situation to the Viscount, fearing his anger. They discuss among themselves, saying the horse was fine just yesterday. One servant puts his hands on his head, frustrated, saying he doesn't know what happened. Their speech is cut short when Damien appears behind them, saying he has a bad feeling. Both servants panic in fear, surprised to see their young master. They quickly try to explain the situation, but Damien calms them down by placing his hands on their shoulders. He tells them he is only there to confirm something and will not place any blame on anyone. He orders them to leave the room for a moment. Stunned by his words, they obey. Afterward, Damien places his hand on the dead horse's body. In his thoughts, he admits that he lost track of the energy from last night, but it has now led him to the stables, where the horse lies dead. He senses deeply and discovers that the energy comes from dark mana. This leads him to conclude that the cloaked man is a dark mage. Since his family is unaware of this, he decides not to tell them in order not to make them worry. He then follows the flow of the energy, which points toward the mountains. Meanwhile, in a cave, the cloaked man lets out a malicious laugh while checking his materials. He thinks the leader of Black Snake is foolish for assembling everything exactly as he wished. He reflects that he lied about needing these materials for a curse, when in truth he will use them for his own experiments, and they won't run out anytime soon. He admits he has lowered his standards, taking on low-tier requests for a little money, but feels he has no choice since the church is pursuing him. He decides to keep a low profile for now. Suddenly, someone appears behind him, commenting on a foul smell. Damien steps forward and says that old men should not live in such cramped places. The cloaked man realizes that this is the eldest son of Viscount Haxon, the same person from yesterday. He demands to know how Damien found the place. Damien replies that he followed the scent he left behind. The cloaked man is stunned, recalling rumors about Damien recklessly standing against Black Snake, but admits he doesn't seem so reckless after all. Damien says being cautious was the right move, then asks if he is working for Blacksnake. The cloaked man confirms and explains that they wanted him to harm Damien's family as much as possible. He then mocks Damien, pitying him, saying he will now die for interfering. Raising his hand with madness in his eyes, he declares that he will capture Damien. Damien replies firmly that he will not let that happen. He reminds himself of his vow never to kill anyone in this life unless absolutely necessary, but makes it clear there is one exception: dark mages. As he pulls his sword from its scabbard, he remembers Dorgo. The cloaked man is stunned that Damien knows that name, realizing Damien is no ordinary opponent. He casts dark energy at Damien, saying he must die now. Damien dodges and closes the distance with his sword. The man thinks Damien is too fast, but before he can react, Damien strikes at him. Damien watches in shock as the man's body reassembles itself. He realizes it is the same ability he saw back at the estate and admits the man is surprisingly strong for someone who took on such a lowly job. The cloaked man mockingly laughs, saying such attacks will not work on him. Damien then decides to strike at him repeatedly, over and over, until nothing remains. The cloaked man sneers, admitting Damien's strength and saying there must be a good reason his name has spread. But he adds that the moment Damien walked into this cave, he had already lost. He summons his dark energy and traps Damien from behind, screaming that he has cast spells around this place, so he cannot be pursued by the church. He boasts that things will get deadly and says Damien will regret crossing a Yuan officer. With a cruel laugh, he declares that he will rot Damien's body until he dies. Damien sharpens his gaze in defiance. The man covers Damien's body with his dark energy. The cloaked man then transforms back into his original form. Laughing, he tells Damien that he has shortened his own life. He recalls his boss saying that he would learn more if he damaged the family, and he thinks that maybe he has now met his boss's expectations. Feeling relieved, he says there is nothing left to stop him, so he will go after the woman he saw the day before. Suddenly, Damien's voice emerges from within the dark energy, asking about a decomposing type curse. The cloaked man looks back in fear and sees Damien unaffected by the curse as he bursts out of the dark energy. The man demands to know how much Damien knows about dark magic. Damien shrugs it off, but he is surprised himself as he looks at his right hand, where a glowing pattern appears. He wonders how there is still authority left within him. He recalls his past life, the moment when Dogro, standing before a glowing vase, told him about authority, known as the power of God. Turning his head, he saw his death knight kneeling before him. Dogro explained that he had given Damien the most powerful body and inserted the strongest magic into him. But it was still not enough, as Damien had yet to awaken his true potential. To make him into the strongest sword, Dogro granted him the power to be converted into a weapon worthy of him, releasing dark energy, and directed it at the vase, which began to glow brightly. He called this authority. Dogro then cast another spell by pressing his hands together forcefully. Dark energy swirled around Damien before being absorbed into his body. Damien screamed as he received the enormous energy, but he remained standing. Light filled the room as Dogro, satisfied, declared that Damien had obtained the authority of God within his body. An emblem shone above Damien. In the present, Damien realizes this is the authority of greed, the same power he received in his previous life. He thought he had lost it after being weakened, but now he knows he still has it. The cloaked man throws an attack, but Damien dodges by leaping to the side. The man asks how Damien survived his spell. Damien simply replies that everyone has hidden moves, angering the man further. Damien recalls the cloaked man saying he was a Yuan officer. He has heard of Yuan before, specialists in assassination using dark magic. Damien admits the man is skilled. The cloaked man repeats Damien's words mockingly, while Damien thinks to himself that he must end this quickly, as the longer it drags on, the more dangerous it will become. The cloaked man decides to use his hidden move, one he had originally saved for use against the church. His bracelet shines as he begins casting. Damien is stunned to sense the enormous amount of dark mana and realizes the bracelet must be an artifact that stores and conceals mana. A giant monster materializes in front of him. Looking up, Damien hears the man declare that no matter what he does, he cannot withstand this power. He sends the monster forward, commanding it to kill Damien. The monster roars and strikes with a powerful attack. Energy flashes, and fire spreads across the cave. The cloaked man smirks, convinced Damien must be dead after being struck by hellfire. But his triumph is short-lived when Damien emerges from the green fog, unharmed. Damien calmly says the man has miscalculated something. The man gasps, unable to comprehend what he is seeing. Damien continues, explaining that the authority of greed not only dissolves magic, but also completely absorbs dark mana. He stands tall without a single scratch as the fire vanishes. The cloaked man shouts in denial, saying a nobody like Damien cannot possess such dangerous power. Damien cuts him off, suggesting he think of it as him gaining upgraded equipment. Though he hates using the power given to him by the one he despises most, he has no choice but to rely on his Death Knight techniques. His sword begins to radiate with a powerful aura. The cloaked man is shaken, wondering how Damien can possibly wield Aura Blade, a technique that only those who have reached the realm of Swordmaster can use. He tries to stop Damien, but Damien raises his sword and unleashes his move, Soul-Severing Slash. The strike lands and takes down the cloaked man. The force of the attack causes the cave to collapse. Damien remains standing tall, his posture strong and unyielding. The cloaked man coughs as his body lies down beneath the rubble. Damien points his sword at his head and says he will kill him with less pain if he tells him about the Black Snake's hideout. In Merchant City, Landwork, a carriage passes across a bridge. Inside, Damien is reading a book. Victor asks him why he is going back to Landwork. Damien addresses Victor as his most loyal servant and instructs him to follow quietly. The book he holds emits dark energy, and Victor notices that his master's face looks radiant, but he is reading something eerie. He asks Damien about the book. Damien replies that it is a dark magic grimoire he recently acquired. In his head, Damien recalls the time he killed a dark mage. Victor thinks Damien is joking and says he cannot read, but he knows that dark magic grimoires are dangerous and not easy to obtain. Suddenly, Victor smells something strange and asks about it. The carriage is filled with a foul odor, but when it stops and they step outside, Damien holds a sack in his hand. He passes the sack to Victor, instructing him to do something for him. Victor realizes the smell is coming from the sack and nervously asks what is inside. Damien calmly says it contains the remains of a mage he fought. Victor freezes, then tries to peek inside. He mutters that he knows he is an idiot, but before finishing his sentence, he sees the remains. Stunned, he screams, and Damien immediately pulls the sack back. Victor loudly addresses his young master in panic, but Damien tells him to calm down since others are watching. Whispering, Victor asks him about it, but Damien brushes it off and instructs him to complete his task first. He passes the sack back to him, ordering him to deliver it to a place that will cause no trouble. Victor stands there in extreme fear. At the Black Snake headquarters, 2 guards stand at the entrance as Damien approaches. He comments on how daring the gangsters are to have their base in the middle of the city. The guards demand his identity. Damien introduces himself as Damien Haxon of the Haxon Viscounty. Both guards mock his name and title. On closer inspection, the guard with the eye patch remembers that their boss had spoken about him. Damien realizes they already know who he is and orders them to step aside because he wants to meet their boss. The eye-patched guard points him toward the door and grants him permission to go inside, which makes Damien wonder if they are actually being reasonable. Suddenly, the bearded guard loads his gun and fires a flare upward. Damien watches his serious expression. The eye-patched guard smirks and asks if he really thought they would simply let him in. Damien demands to know what they did. Assassins begin to gather from the surrounding area. The eye-patched guard tells him that their boss has prepared a warm welcome for him. Surrounded by assassins, Damien smirks and tells them they will regret this move. Elsewhere, the governor of Landwork, Sebastian Baker. He says he is thankful to Cedric because now he can enjoy himself. Many dishes are placed on the dining table. Robert, a Landwork knight, Cedric, sitting across from them, says it is an honor that they are enjoying themselves. Sebastian asks if it is true, and Cedric confirms, saying he would be even happier if they could visit any time they wish. Sebastian addresses him and gives permission for the Black Snake to take over all the merchant areas belonging to other organizations. Cedric repeats to confirm, and Sebastian further gives permission for Black Snake to control the red light district as well. Cedric says he is pleased, but points out that others will oppose it. Sebastian smirks and assures him that he will silence any opposition with his authority. Robert apologizes that he could not do more for Cedric. Cedric replies that he is content, since Robert is keeping the city safe. He adds that protecting a big city like Landwork from harm is not easy, and though Robert is a modest man, he does not need to lower himself. Robert shrugs it off. The governor then tells Cedric to let him know his needs, promising that they will try to help with everything they have, while Cedric thanks them both. As Cedric bows, he smirks secretly, thinking that in the future he will no longer bow to these weak men. Soon, the city will belong to Black Snake, and both Sebastian and Robert will be bowing to him instead. Suddenly, a knight bursts into the room, urgently calling for his boss. Cedric turns back, asking what the matter is. The knight apologizes and whispers something in Cedric's ear. Hearing this, Cedric shouts Damien's full name. Everyone inside the room turns their eyes toward him. Cedric grits his teeth, thinking about the dark mage he sent earlier, but also feels reassured since he already informed his subordinates of the situation. Cedric orders the knight to go, but the knight hesitates and asks if it will be all right. Cedric assures him that Damien has come only to meet his own death. Outside, Cedric's knights are stationed to kill Damien. Damien drinks a potion and charges forward with his full strength, his glowing gaze fixed on his enemies as he takes them down one after another while advancing. In town, people watch as blue-cloaked men march ahead, shrouded in dark energy and radiating a menacing aura. Cedric is sweating as he decides to come out after sensing something bad. From the tower balcony, he sees his knights lying on the ground, groaning in pain. Not a single one is standing except Damien. Cedric wonders how this happened and how a kid like him could do this. He asks the knight beside him if the man below is really Damien Haxon, and the knight confirms it. Cedric thinks that according to the rumors, Damien is the useless son of the Viscount, and he never knew he had such skills. Then instantly, he wonders if the dark mage he sent has also been wiped out by him. He thinks of seeking help and retreating, while his knight calls out to him from behind. On the ground, Damien is being targeted by a weapon. He wonders if it is powered by magic. The knight behind the weapon dares him to block the attacks. The weapon fires a fireball, and Damien decides to counter it with his sword. The enemy knight mocks him for trying to counter flames with just a sword. Damien then uses his secret move, Countless Thunder Shadow Revelation, and redirects the fireball back to the enemy knight. The knight's eyes widen in disbelief before the entire group is destroyed by the explosion. Damien thinks he is almost done and turns back, saying now he just needs to find the boss of Black Snake. Before he can finish his sentence, someone suddenly rushes in to land a punch at him. Damien dodges instantly, and the punch slams into the ground. Damien senses that the man's aura is so dense it makes his skin tingle. The man ahead says he was curious to see what kind of person caused all this trouble. Damien thinks to himself that he must be an official knight. The man stands tall and addresses him as an overconfident troublemaker. Townspeople gather, watching as knights surround Damien. He wonders why knights and soldiers, who are supposed to maintain public order, have come here, and he concludes one thing. The governor of the city loudly asks about the commotion and swears on his name that he will punish Damien. Damien calls the situation a grand quest and asks why he should be punished by him. The governor raises his voice, calling it nonsense that Damien doesn't even know what he did. He clenches his fist and says Damien tried to harm Cedric, whom he calls a kind businessman, and that Damien attacked his company and killed many of his employees. Among the onlookers, one man wonders aloud how a gangster like Cedric could be considered a businessman, but another quickly silences him. The governor continues, saying Damien's actions are unforgivable at any cost. Cedric thinks to himself that Damien cannot directly harm someone being protected by the government. Damien ignores the governor and instead calls for the boss of Black Snake to come forward and fight him, making Cedric angry. Damien guesses that Black Snake must have connections with the city administration, calling it a worshiper-level loyalty. Damien mockingly says the governor calls a gangster like Cedric a kind businessman, proving his poor judgment. The governor silences him and loudly declares that if Damien apologizes, he might reduce his punishment. Damien argues back that he has done nothing to be apologetic for. The governor calls him arrogant, saying he tried to show leniency because Damien is young, but now he has no choice. He calls for Sir Robert. Robert steps forward, holding his weapon, introduces himself, and orders Damien to drop his sword and surrender. Damien says he is surprised to see the guardian knight of the city stepping in. Robert finds him strange, noting he can't see even a little fear in Damien's eyes, and asks if he is bold or just stupid. Damien replies that he is confident. Robert smirks, calling him a fool, and strikes with his weapon, but Damien dodges instantly. The ground shatters under Robert's force. Damien admits to himself that even though he shows confidence, the truth is that fighting Robert at his current level is difficult, so he decides to hold back until the right time. Robert attacks again, and Damien barely blocks by crossing his arms before falling back to the ground. He notices his arm is injured and wonders how Robert hit him even though he tried to block. He glances back, thinking about whether she has still not arrived. Robert seizes the opening and launches a powerful strike. Damien is about to be hit, but someone else appears, blocking the attack. Robert's weapon is forced back to the ground. Everyone is stunned by the sight. Robert grits his teeth and asks if Damien had an associate. He demands to know the stranger's identity. The figure reveals her face. She has silver eyes and silver hair. The soldiers are shocked by her appearance. Robert asks if she is a paladin. From behind, Victor calls out Damien's name. Damien exhales heavily and asks why he is late. Victor runs toward him, shouting that he has finally arrived. Cedric grits his teeth at the sudden appearance of a paladin. He concludes that the church must be involved and wonders if they know about his deal with the dark mages. Victor asks Damien if he is all right. Damien squeezes his cheeks and admits he is not. He waited too long for him, and wonders if the woman is a paladin from the church. He then praises Victor for carrying out his orders. Victor happily says he can at least follow his master's commands. A few hours earlier, at the church, people were praying. Victor entered, breathing heavily. The paladin lady looked back at him. Victor asked if this was the branch of the Holy Church. She approached, confirming it, and asked him what the matter was. He showed her a sack and a small notebook, saying his master sent him to deliver these things to the church as evidence of someone working with the dark mage. The paladin froze and asked to see the notebook. As soon as she held it, she sensed dark energy and saw the symbol on it. Internally, she admitted she had finally found one of the leaders of Yulon, Agito. She removed her prayer attire and asked Victor about the one who sent him. In the present, she asks Damien if he is Damien Haxon. He confirms. Victor wonders if she is the same person from the church. The paladin says she has received the evidence, and from here the church will handle everything. Damien replies that they won't get in the Holy Church's way, and she can do whatever she wants. She thanks him and bows. Damien smiles, thinking that now that the paladin of the church is here, things will go smoothly. The people of the Holy Church live as servants of God. They are extremely kind and generous to the common people, but harsh towards demons and heretics, a group of extremists. The pioneers of the Holy Church are the paladins, and now these paladins are on Damien's side. The paladin makes an announcement. The church has received a report of someone who made a contract with a fugitive dark mage, and that person is present in land work. The citizens begin to murmur, wondering who could do such a thing. The paladin then declares that until the investigation is complete, the city will be placed under the authority of the church. The governor protests, saying that the kingdom has granted Landwork the right to govern itself. He demands to know how the church can take control of the city while he, the viceroy, is present. The paladin addresses Viceroy Sebastian directly, saying that eliminating heretics is the will of God and that the church's authority overrides that of the kingdom. The governor vows to protest this to the church. The paladin grimly states that he and the knight are prime suspects. Both are stunned. The governor asks what she means, demanding to know why they would work with a dark mage. She points at Cedric, declaring that he is the one who sheltered and supported the dark mage. Cedric is stunned. She continues, saying that even providing protection to that man is suspicious enough. The governor immediately turns to Cedric, asking if it is true. Cedric panics and denies it. The paladin says they have proof, and yet he refuses to accept it. She shows them the notebook and explains that it contains a record of Cedric purchasing items for the dark mage, every single transaction. They will verify the information by cross-checking it with store records. Cedric grits his teeth, thinking bitterly about why the Dark Mage would write such things down after insulting him. As the church knights approach, Cedric shouts that he has nothing to do with the Dark Mage. The paladin replies that the truth will be known once the investigation is complete, and she orders her knights to arrest him. The knights seize Cedric, the governor, and his knight. The governor glances at Damien, who stands smiling. In his thoughts, the governor curses him, realizing this was his plan all along. He doesn't want to be taken and fears the church knights. Cedric asks Robert if he is surrendering to the church as well. He curses the church knights, but Robert does not answer. Cedric keeps calling out to him. Finally, Robert retaliates, breaking free from the knights. He swiftly rushes forward, grabs his weapon from the ground, and shouts that he will kill everyone and escape. He swings at the paladin. Cedric smirks. The governor is stunned, and Damien thinks Robert is making a mistake. Robert's strike lands on the ground as the paladin dodges. She counters with a punch using her full power. Cedric and the governor gasp in shock, while Damien smiles. The paladin takes down Robert with a single punch. She declares, "Whoever disobeys the will of God will be punished." Cedric, handcuffed, is kneeling down while the governor protests, demanding that he be released. From the side, Victor asks if that is the infamous boss of Black Snake. Damien confirms it with a wicked smile. Victor remarks that despite the rumors, Cedric looks ordinary. Cedric grits his teeth and curses Damien in his thoughts. Damien turns his head toward the paladin and thanks her for handling everything. He thinks to himself that while he expected her to be strong, she has proven to be far more powerful. Judging from her sacred power, she must be the apprentice of the Azure Flame. Brigandine, known as the Azure Flame, is the strongest man in the church and one of the 5 great saints, famous for eliminating countless heretics. Damien is called, and both he and Victor look in that direction. The paladin approaches and thanks him for taking down a Yuan officer. Damien casually replies that anyone would have done what he did. The paladin says the church will not charge him for anything and will acknowledge his work. Damien admits he doesn't understand what she means. She then directly asks if he involved the church to cover up his attacks on Black Snake. Damien is stunned that she figured it out so quickly. He instantly bows an apology, explaining that the Dark Mage not only cursed the territory, but also harmed his family. She pauses, then, after some thought, decides not to hold him accountable. Damien thinks she is more flexible than the rumors about the church suggested. The paladin then informs him that the bounty on Agito's head will be delivered to him soon. Damien says he didn't even know there was a bounty and asks how much it is. She tells him it is 1,000 gold. He thinks to himself that the amount is enough to buy a small castle, but then asks if he can receive something else instead. Victor is annoyed, thinking about how his master can turn down such a reward. The paladin says it is possible and asks what he wants. Damien replies that he wants one of the mana cultivation techniques held by the church. The paladin wonders aloud why someone strong enough to defeat Black Snake would need such a technique. Damien recalls how, during his fight with the Dark Mage, he was only lucky to win by relying on the authority. To defeat stronger mages and continue growing stronger, he needs the advanced training methods used by knights, far more complicated than the basic techniques he has already learned. He tells her that he only knows the basic level techniques and wants to master something more advanced. The paladin is stunned that he has reached his current level using only basic cultivation techniques. She notices the enormous aura flowing through his body and realizes that if he speaks the truth, then he is extraordinarily talented. She also recalls how boldly he took down a heretic without hesitation. Then she smiles brightly and says she has a better solution. Damien perks up and listens. She asks if he would be interested in becoming a paladin. Damien pauses before firmly refusing. The paladin is visibly taken aback. The paladin switches to a stern tone and presses Damien for his reason. She insists that becoming a paladin is a sacred duty given by God, granting the right to punish evil in his name. Victor panics as she demands if Damien even understands how hard it is to become one. Damien thinks to himself that he doesn't believe in any religion and has no interest in becoming a servant of the church. Of course, he cannot say that aloud, so he decides to make something up. He clears his throat, stands firmly, and says he believes he is not worthy of God's love. He explains that he only wishes to travel the world and follow in the traces of God as a weak devotee. Victor thinks the lie won't work, but the paladin clasps Damien's hands and says she is moved by such sacred words. She agrees to his request that instead of the bounty, the church will provide him with a mana cultivation technique. She adds that if he ever changes his mind, he can come to the church anytime, and she will warmly welcome him. She then says she wants to ask something else. Damien, in his thoughts, assures himself that he will never change his mind. The paladin introduces herself as Agnes, the first apprentice of the Azure Flame. Damien realizes he was right about her identity. He greets her respectfully, addressing her as Lady Agnes, and asks for permission to conclude his business here. She has no objection but asks about his work, while Victor stands gloomily behind them. Cedric, still kneeling on the ground, glares at Damien as he approaches. Cedric begins to insult him, but before he can finish, Damien kicks him, leaving him groaning in pain. Cedric tries to badmouth him again, but receives another powerful kick to the face, knocking him back to the ground. Damien continues striking him as Cedric groans in pain. Finally, Damien exhales heavily and admits he feels satisfied now. Victor asks if it's really over, and Damien replies, maybe. At the estate of the Lionbloom family, Erwin's father, Holland Lionbloom, Marquis of the Apple Kingdom, slams open a door and finds his son Erwin shivering in bed. Erwin sees his father approach and asks about the earlier incident. Trembling in fear, Erwin says that useless boy tried to kill him, first with a knife, then with a fork. Holland grows anxious, disturbed by the sight of his once lively son trembling in fear. He turns to the guards for answers. One hesitates, but Holland urges him to speak. The guard finally admits that it was Damien of the Haxon family. Holland erupts in rage, his power flaring so strongly that vases in the room shatter. He demands to know how a useless Haxon dared to harm his precious son. Accusing Damien of using underhanded tricks, he orders his guards to send men to the Haxon estate and bring Damien back at the Haxon family estate. Agnes greets Viscount Haxon and introduces herself as a paladin from the church. Mr. and Mrs. Haxon greet her back nervously. Mr. Haxon looks at Damien, thinking he has caused trouble behind his back, and now a paladin from the church has come because of him. He then tells Agnes that he was already aware of her presence, since Damien informed him she would be staying for some time. Agnes confirms and says it was necessary to make that decision in order to investigate the heretic. Mr. Haxon shows concern, saying their house is small and has no space for guests. Agnes immediately hands him a sack of gold coins, calling it a token of gratitude for his kindness. His mood changes, and he happily tells her she can stay as long as she likes. Mr. and Mrs. Haxon leave joyful while Agnes approaches Damien and thanks him for allowing her team to investigate freely. Damien casually shrugs it off, but recalls when she previously said she had another request. He wonders if her request is simply to stay in his home. Agnes says the investigation is important, but she wants to know something else. Damien pays attention. With a bright expression, she says she wants to hear about him preaching the world. Both of Damien's parents, who are leaving, stop mid-step and turn back to tease him. Damien mutters that they are getting the wrong idea. Agnes then hands Damien some books, explaining that they are specially selected volumes of mana cultivation instructions for him. Damien thanks her and asks why she gave him 2 books. She explains that one is a sword technique manual, as she felt it would be wrong to give him only a cultivation technique without a matching sword technique. The books are named Destructive Sword Technique and Destructive Energy Technique. Damien admits he never came across these in his past life. Agnes says it was not easy for her to acquire them. Damien thanks her again. She insists that it truly was difficult, since the church itself is against those techniques. Damien casually comments that she must have endured a lot. Agnes quickly explains that she had to rely on her master. After she spoke of Damien to her master, he admitted that Damien might be the one chosen for the church. She takes his hand and once again asks if he is interested in becoming a paladin. Damien frees his hand and apologizes. After a pause, Agnes says she understands. She gives up, saying that pressing further would be disrespectful, but adds with a smile that if he ever changes his mind, he can come to her, then walks away. Damien admits to himself that she is truly devoted and her obsession is on another level. Meanwhile, in the Dark Mage's cave, two church knights are investigating. One addresses the other. The young knight asks if he finds the situation suspicious. The older knight asks what he means. The young knight says that Agito, a high-ranking member of Yulon, had escaped the church many times. He adds that Agito belonged to the cursed school, which made him weak in direct combat, but still, he cannot believe a powerful mage like him could be killed by a rural noble. The older knight admits he shares the same doubts, but Lady Agnes hasn't said anything. The young knight asks if they should raise the issue. The older knight says they should wait until the investigation is complete and focus on their task. Agnes then approaches from behind, telling them they can trust Damien. Both knights turn back and address her respectfully. She says she knows what they are thinking but insists Damien did not lie. One knight asks how Damien could possibly have killed Agito. Agnes replies that they already know how he managed to do so. The knights are confused until they recall Damien explaining that he dodged Agito's attacks and took him down with a single strike. The younger knight asks if that's what she means. Agnes says that she doubted Damien's skill. So, before stepping in, she hid and observed his abilities. She reveals that Damien defeated many men without receiving a single injury. The most unbelievable part was when he redirected a fireball made of magic. Both knights open their mouths in shock, asking if that is even possible. Agnes confirms, saying that those who reach the level of Swordmaster can easily block such attacks. The older knight is about to comment on Damien, but stops mid-sentence. The younger knight clarifies that he is not calling Damien a Swordmaster, but admits Damien is a highly talented warrior. Agnes explains that while her original mission was to pursue Yulon, she also wants to persuade Damien to meet her master, as he could become vital to the church. She orders the knights to put aside their doubts and investigate properly. They agree to follow her instructions. Somewhere else, three knights are riding their horses. They are from the house of Lionbloom. Alpus, an apprentice knight, stretches and announces they have finally arrived. Another apprentice knight, Lavender, complains about the smell. Lavender asks him for cologne. Their leader, Garrick, the official knight of the Lionbloom family, immediately tells them to be quiet, glaring at them with sharp eyes. They arrive at the Haxon estate. Garrick asks if this is the place. Alpus confirms. Garrick then asks their objective. Alpus says they are here to arrest Damien Haxon. Garrick smirks and says arresting someone like him will be easy, but that alone will not be enough to compensate for the humiliation suffered by his young master Erwin and the Marquis. He pauses mid-sentence when he notices an old man walking nearby, leaning on a wooden staff. Garrick calls out to the old man. The old man turns his head, asking their identities. Instead of answering, Garrick asks if he is from the Haxon estate. The old man turns fully, confirming he is, and asks their business. Garrick swings his sword and takes down the old man with a single strike. He coldly declares that a commoner failing to bow before the crest of House Lionbloom is an unforgivable sin. One subordinate quietly notes that the old man was blind. Garrick calls both of them closer and says he has a perfect idea. When they reach the Haxon estate, they will not only take Damien but also kill everyone inside. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the estate, Victor is cleaning when he sees the knights arriving on their horses, shocking him. Agnes and the knights step outside the cave. The older knight admits they weren't able to extract much information because of the collapse of the site. Agnes says it's fine and praises their hard work. Then all three of them turn their eyes toward Damien, who is focused on his training. Leaves swirl around him through his energy. One knight admits he doesn't understand what he's seeing, and the other agrees but adds that it is incredible. Agnes is shocked and wonders what is happening. She thinks that the destructive energy technique she gave him is a cultivation method that, when mastered at an advanced level, allows the user to absorb mana from the surroundings. But she is stunned that Damien managed to do it in just a few hours. Damien exhales and opens his eyes, only to find the three of them standing there, admiring his training. He steps forward and asks if they have finished their investigation. Agnes confirms while approaching him. She remarks on his progress. Damien replies it's just a little, while holding one of the books. He admits she was right when she said the books were difficult to obtain. Since he was a sword master in his previous life, sword techniques aren't very important to him, but the cultivation method is highly useful. The destructive energy technique was created to balance out the heavy mana consumption of the destructive sword technique. It makes it easier to gather mana quickly compared to other techniques, and even helps briefly draw external mana. Damien notices himself looking at Agnes, who is also silently looking at him. He waves his hand and says it's time for dinner. He asks if they will return together, but Agnes looks down quietly. Suddenly, Damien senses killing intent. He mutters that pests have arrived. Agnes looks at him, confused. He advises her to return on her own since he has urgent work to handle, then runs quickly in the opposite direction. The three knights watch in awe, amazed by his speed. Agnes thinks he must be controlling his mana with extreme precision to move that fast, and wonders just how far his abilities can go. At the entrance of the estate, Lavender punches Victor with full force, knocking him to the ground. Lavender continues hitting him while mocking, demanding he bring Damien out immediately. Victor shouts that he won't, because they will hurt him. From behind, a maid rushes to call Mr. Haxon outside. Mr. Haxon runs out and shouts for them to stop. The knights recognize him as Viscount Haxon. He quickly rushes to Victor, lifts his head, and asks if he is all right, but Victor is unconscious. Mr. Haxon shouts at the knights, demanding an explanation and questioning how knights could attack a civilian. Garrick steps forward, saying this is nothing compared to what the Haxons did to House Lionbloom. He formally addresses him as Viscount Paul Haxon and delivers Marquis Lionbloom's demand. Hand over Damien Haxon, or their land will suffer. Mr. Haxon thinks he expected retaliation from Lionbloom, but never this kind of savagery. He suspects they are lying. If he hands over Damien, they'll turn this place into hell. Gritting his teeth, he firmly refuses, declaring that he will not hand over his son. Garrick asks if he is certain of his decision. Mr. Haxon confirms he is. Garrick smirks, saying he has left them with no choice. He orders his knights to destroy everything until Damien comes out. Mr. Haxon tries to stop them, but Damien suddenly appears. Mr. Haxon turns and sees him standing behind. Garrick also turns, surprised he hadn't noticed Damien's sudden appearance. Lavender demands to know Damien's identity, but the knights are unable to move under his pressure. Damien walks past them and approaches his father. He kneels down and asks if his father is all right. Mr. Haxon replies that he is fine, but Victor is not. He tells the knights that they should consider themselves lucky. If Victor didn't have a strong body, he would already be dead. Damien says that if Victor had died, he would have finished all three of them on the spot. Alpus insults him. Garrick then asks if he really is Damien, saying that while people claimed he had the guts to oppose the Marquis, it seems he's just a maniac. Or perhaps he's only confident because he defeated a noble with underhanded tactics. Damien repeats his last words coldly. Garrick orders his knights to teach Damien a lesson. Alpus and Lavender step forward to obey. Damien shrugs inwardly. He blocks their attacks with just his hand and thinks this is the perfect opportunity to test the mana he has gathered using the destructive energy technique. Then lands a hard punch on him. Damien thinks he's lucky the targets came to him. Alpus rushes to Lavender's side, but Damien delivers a powerful kick to his jaw. Damien decides to make full use of his enemies. Both knights groan in pain as their leader watches from his horse. Victor slowly opens his eyes, weakly calling his young master. Damien asks if he is all right. Victor raises his hand and gives a thumbs up. Damien is taken aback, then smiles, thinking Victor is interesting. Jarek dismounted and wondered aloud if his young master Erwin had been fooled by tricks. He could not understand how someone so useless could possess such skills. Damien replied that he didn't need to know. Jarek studied him carefully and then said he understood now. Everything was falling into place. Damien frowned, wondering what he was thinking. Jarek then firmly declared that he was not Damien Haxon. A brief silence spread. Damien made a strange face and demanded to know what nonsense he was spouting. Jarek shouted at him to stop lying. He claimed this was a trap set trying to stop the prosperity of the Lionbloom family. He accused Damien of being an imposter, hired to defeat Erwin in order to damage the Lionbloom family's reputation. Reaching for his sword, Jarek demanded to know how someone like that dared to oppose the Lionblooms. Damien muttered that Jarek was even more of a madman than he expected. Alpus twitched his hand slightly and decided to pretend he was unconscious. Mr. Haxon supported Victor, helping him stand. Jarek advanced, preparing to unleash his move. He acknowledged that his opponent was skilled but thought him unlucky, as he planned to take him down the moment he came closer. He tried to strike at Damien, but Damien countered, blocking the strike with his sword. Smirking, Damien remarked that the Lion Blooms had finally sent a skilled knight. Jarek staggered back in shock, stunned that Damien had blocked his attack. He insisted it must have been luck and challenged him to block the next strike. But all of his attacks were blocked again. Gritting his teeth, Jarek was left wide open as Damien suddenly closed the distance. "Now it's my turn," Damien said, striking him down. Jarek couldn't follow what was happening before Damien kicked him, sending him rolling across the ground, shivering in pain. Damien said coldly that the strike was for Victor. Barely standing, Jarek rushed forward and unleashed his ultimate move, the lion's technique, Sword of Speed. Countless lion-shaped strikes surged toward Damien. But Damien countered with his sword, breaking Jarek's blade. Jarek was stunned before Damien strikes again, injuring Jarek's right arm. Screaming in indescribable pain, Jarek collapsed to the ground. Mr. Haxon stood frozen in shock, while Victor felt relieved and happy that Damien had won. Damien looked back as Jarek groaned, desperately trying to press against his wound. Damien pointed his sword at him. Jarek pleaded for mercy, admitting defeat and begging to be spared. He confessed he didn't even know who Damien truly was. Damien declared, "I am Damien Haxon. You should have begged for your life earlier. It's too late now. You harmed my family and even made my servant uglier, and now you ask me to spare you." Jarek apologized for everything he had done. Damien replied that Jarek still didn't even know whom he should be apologizing to. Jarek looked confused as Victor and Mr. Haxon stepped forward, holding a sword and sticks in their hands. Jarek began to worry for his life. Jarek, along with Alpus and Lavender, badly beaten, are sitting on the ground with their hands tied. Victor wickedly asks if he can beat Jarek more, saying he is still not satisfied. Damien smirks and replies that Jarek will die if Victor keeps hitting him. Mr. Haxon places his hand on Damien's shoulder and tells him they should stop. Jarek addresses Mr. Haxon as Sir Haxon and pleads for mercy, admitting his mistakes and apologizing. After a brief pause, Mr. Haxon asks if a single apology can really be enough for the chaos they caused. He points out that if Damien had not been talented, their entire territory would have been destroyed and Damien would have been taken to the Marquis, suffering who knows what. Jarek continues to plead in desperation. Mr. Haxon hesitates, then after some thought, turns to Damien and signals him to take action. Damien understands. He reflects that he never intended to kill them from the start, since doing so would stain the relationship between House Lionbloom and House Haxon. If he were alone, he could handle the Marquis family himself, but for his family's sake, he cannot take that risk. At the same time, if he lets them go, the Marquis family will surely retaliate in the future. He finds himself unable to decide. Just then, someone calls his name, Agnes. She runs toward him, asking what's going on. Damien thinks she may be the solution to this problem. After learning about the incident, Agnes says she can help. Damien asks if she has any ideas. Agnes responds that since House Haxon was the first to successfully kill one of Yulan's officers, the church can formally recognize them as an allied household. Damien seems pleased at this. Mr. Haxon thinks to himself that if this happens, their family will be able to escape their current crisis. Victor asks whether forming an alliance with the church would really be that advantageous. Damien then switches to a puppy eyes expression, holds Agnes's hand, and asks if she can accept their request if it isn't too much. She confirms that it isn't. Damien smirks inwardly, amused, thinking that he has always wanted the church's protection. He excuses himself, while Agnes simply shrugs it off. Mr. Haxon wonders aloud if his son is using his looks to charm her, and Victor nods in agreement. Damien approaches Jarek and asks if everyone heard what Agnes just said. He instructs Jarek to tell House Lionbloom that House Haxon is now under the protection of the church. He warns them that if they try any tricks, they will have to answer directly to the church. After receiving this message, all three knights run away instantly, shouting their thanks. Victor waves his stick at them, telling them to be grateful for their luck. Watching them flee, Victor says they are running away in disgrace and that now the Haxon family can finally breathe in peace. Mr. Haxon, however, doubts it, and says they need to decide on their next course of action. He declares it is time to call a family meeting. In the Haxon family's meeting room, everyone gathers, with Agnes standing quietly at the back. Mr. Haxon opens the discussion about settling the dispute between their house and House Lionbloom. Mrs. Haxon and Louise listen carefully. Abel raises his hand to share his opinion, saying that since they are already under the church's protection, why would they need to resolve the dispute at all? Louise replies that they don't want the church to intervene completely. Abel is surprised, and Mr. Haxon agrees with Louise. He explains that it is not in the church's nature to involve itself too deeply in noble affairs. He also adds that the Lionbloom family's power is not based solely on military strength. If they wished, they could pressure smaller noble families in many different ways. At this point, their family has two options: pay off the Lionblooms or seek protection from a higher-ranking family. He says that entering under the protection of another great house could be the best choice for them. His words are cut off by Agnes, who steps forward and suggests another solution. Everything could be resolved if Sir Damien became a paladin. Damien's expression turns blank, as he did not expect her to bring that up at this moment. Everyone stares at Damien, and he directly refuses the idea. Mr. Haxon says that if Damien doesn't want it, then it can't be helped. Damien feels satisfied, but Abel suddenly stands up, slamming the table as he shouts at his father. His father asks what the matter is, and Abel argues, demanding why he is so easily accepting the refusal when everything could be solved instantly if Damien became a paladin. He points at Damien and suggests that his father order him to become one, saying he can't stand to see Damien's face anymore. Agnes seems happy at Abel's words, while Damien thinks Abel is talking as if it's none of his business. Abel keeps insisting that Damien become a paladin, saying that everything started because of him anyway. He continues speaking until Mr. Haxon calls his name sharply. Mr. Haxon reminds him that they have a guest present and orders him to sit down, telling him to behave. Abel is shocked, but quietly sits back down. Mr. Haxon then admits that Abel is right in some ways, but says it is not entirely Damien's fault. He explains that the second son of the Lionbloom family had bad intentions toward Louise. If Damien hadn't acted at that time, it would have been very difficult to make Erwin give up on her. He acknowledges that Damien protected his sister from the Marquis family in place of his powerless father. Standing up, Mr. Haxon addresses Damien and praises him for his actions earlier that day, saying he stood up for the sake of his family and paid the Lionblooms back properly. Damien thinks to himself that he didn't expect his father to say that. He lowers his head, saying it was simply his duty to do so. Mr. Haxon assures him that from now on, he himself will handle things further. Damien asks how he plans to do that. Mr. Haxon requests a chance to act like a good father for once. At that moment, a butler enters the meeting room and apologizes for the intrusion. Mr. Haxon asks what the matter is. The butler informs him that someone has arrived from House Goldpixie. Mr. Haxon wonders aloud what business the Duke of Goldpixie could have with them. The butler hesitates but then explains that young Master Damien borrowed money using the family's wheat fields as surety, and the repayment deadline has long since passed. Damien is shocked, realizing he had completely forgotten about it. He turns to look at his father, who is now in full rage. Mr. Haxon grabs Damien by the shirt and scolds him loudly. A man with braided brown hair removes his hat from his head and greets Damien, who is standing in front of him. Damien thinks he doesn't remember this man very well. The man's name is Oland Mishi, the West Branch manager of Dash and Cash. He says to Damien that they are meeting after a long time and that he came today because it is the repayment date they agreed on. Damien recalls how Oland deceived him in the past with his sweet words. He had suggested Damien use his family's land as collateral, assuring him that they would be able to lend him money. He added that it was just a formality, as someone like him could never take land from a noble. Damien had signed the long contract without thinking at all. The present Damien regretfully questions his past self, wondering why he gave away the land deed. Damien asks Olin how much he owes them. Olin smirks and says that Damien borrowed 200 gold, and with interest, the amount has now risen to 300 gold. Damien is shocked to hear this. Olin confidently mentions that the amount is correct and even offers Damien the chance to review the contract. Damien, still in disbelief, thinks it has been so long that he doesn't even remember why he borrowed the money in the first place. But one thing is clear, His family doesn't have that kind of money right now, and fears that if this continues, they will lose everything. Olin and reminds Damien that if he doesn't repay today, the land he used as collateral will go under dash and cash. Damien nervously reminds him that he had said the collateral was only a formality. Olin smirks and explains that Duke Goldpixie has ordered them to collect all debts, whether from nobles or commoners, leaving them with no choice. Damien starts sweating as Olin demands him to hand over the money. Olin squints, asking if he doesn't have it. Damien admits that he wasn't able to prepare the repayment. Olin notices this and smirks while acknowledging it. He sits on a nearby sofa, puts his legs on the table, and clicks his tongue, saying that Damien shouldn't have borrowed the money in the first place. He then snaps his fingers, and his two guards step closer to Damien. Olin decides to collect the debt in his own way. He admits to himself that he already knew Damien wouldn't be able to repay. Olin likes money, but even more than that, he enjoys seeing nobles bow before him. He wonders what kind of face Damien will make in a situation like this. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Mr. Haxon sighs heavily. He walks in circles, clearly stressed, while Abel stands with his hand on the wall. Mrs. Haxon and Louise are enjoying tea together. Mrs. Haxon tells her husband to stop pacing and rest, warning that if he continues, he might make a hole in the floor. Louise tells Abel to calm down as well. Mr. Haxon holds his head in frustration, yelling about how he can rest in such a situation when their family might be ruined. Abel agrees and says the same, that they can't sit quietly while their future is at risk. Mrs. Haxon calmly sips her tea and reminds them that Damien said he would handle everything, suggesting they trust him. Louise agrees, adding that Damien has never failed whenever he took charge. Mr. Haxon makes a horrified face and says that while Damien's swordsmanship is exceptional, there's a big difference between combat skills and negotiation skills. Outside, Damien is busy fighting Olin's guards. He grabs one guard and slams him onto the floor, knocking him out. Olin jumps in surprise, while Damien worries about the damage, saying his father will be furious since they had just repaired the wall a few days ago. He pushed the defeated guard aside, as the other one rushes at him with a sword. Damien instantly extends his arm and grabs him by the neck. The guard groans in pain as Damien holds him up. Damien says that the man just drew a sword on a noble and smirks, saying this counts as self-defense. Olin screams in fear, trembling as Damien approaches him. Damien addresses him, and Olin listens closely. Then Damien tells him to kneel, and Olin nervously complies. Damien admits that he can't repay such a large amount right now. Olin quickly says he is fine with that. Damien then places his hand on Olin's shoulder and asks if he would like to be repaid in another way. Olin, terrified, reluctantly agrees. The next day, Abel tells his father he feels heartbroken. Mr. Haxon demands to know why, and Abel mutters that justice is often defeated by power. Mrs. Haxon and Louise are saying farewell to Damien, asking him to stay safe and eat properly during his trip. Damien assures them he will. Abel kneels on the ground, shouting in frustration, wondering aloud why things are this way. Mr. Haxon scolds him, telling him to stop talking nonsense and instead cheer for his brother, who is going on a journey. Deep down, however, Mr. Haxon agrees with Abel, but is worried whether Damien's plan will succeed. Agnes approaches Damien and tells him she feels sad about parting ways. Damien notices her and says her name. He walks toward her and thanks her for everything she has done. Agnes simply replies that she only did what she needed to. She looks away as she tells him they have completed their investigation and will return tomorrow. She closes her eyes, putting her hands together in prayer for Damien to receive blessings on his journey. Damien thanks her and does the same. Agnes softly mentions that if he changes his mind, before she can finish, Damien cuts her off, saying he won't, and turns away. Damien walks toward the carriage, thinking that all goodbyes are done. He asks Victor if they should start the journey. Victor confirms, adding that he has loaded all the luggage. He opens the door, and both of them step inside the carriage. Damien comments that the carriage is very spacious, while Victor thinks it's cozy. Sitting across from them, Olin greets them nervously. He respectfully assures them they won't face any problems during the journey. Damien smiles at his attitude and says they will have lobster for lunch. Olin responds in surprise. Damien tells Victor to begin, and Victor acknowledges, instructing the carriage rider to move forward. The rider nods and pulls the reins of the horses. Damien sits confidently, his face full of determination and excitement to visit House Gold Pixie. Damien, Victor, and Olin are standing in front of the huge Gold Pixie estate. Victor makes a sound of amazement, while Damien comments that this mansion is truly fitting for a family known as the richest in the entire kingdom. Damien thanks Olin for making the journey easier for them, adding that he won't forget his help if things go according to his expectations. Olin humbly acknowledges this and mentions that he has already spoken with the Duke, meaning Damien just needs to go inside. Olin recalls their journey, thinking about how Damien made him work like a servant. He secretly hopes things won't go as Damien expects, and even wishes for his downfall. Outwardly, however, he cheers for Damien, pretending to hope that things go well for him. Damien casually thanks him and tells Victor he will be back shortly. Victor happily acknowledges. Inside the mansion, Adam Gold Pixie, the Duke of the Apple Kingdom, greets Damien. He recognizes him as the infamous troublemaker of the Haxon family. Damien forces a short laugh and says he is honored, though internally he thinks that nobles are all the same. Adam asks why he was looking for him. Damien calmly explains that he borrowed money from the family's lending business and that the repayment date has already arrived. Adam nods, calling him their customer. Damien confidently admits he doesn't have the money with him, but wishes to repay in another way. Adam demands to know what that way is. Damien explains that he will defeat the Lion Blooms to repay his debt. Adam widens his eyes in surprise, and his soldiers begin whispering among themselves. Adam laughs, saying Damien must have heard the news. His knight, Jael Heimlich, agrees with him. Damien thinks that everyone in the kingdom already knows the rumor. According to the rumor, a gold mine was discovered on the shared border between the Lion Bloom and Gold Pixie families. These two families have never been on good terms, so they planned a duel involving lower-class knights to determine who would gain monopoly over the gold mine. Damien already knows who will win, the Lion Blooms. He believes they have expanded their forces quickly using their newfound gold as support, causing the Gold Pixies to lose much of their influence. Damien smirks, thinking that if he helps the Duke win, he can repay his debt and also keep the Lion Blooms in check. Duke Adam calls Damien ambitious and asks if it's true that he defeated the Lion Bloom family's second son and destroyed the large organization in land work. Damien laughs, then sighs in relief, admitting those are not rumors. Adam frowns, saying it's tempting, and adds that he has been searching for a knight to participate in the duel. Damien claims he is the perfect candidate, as there is no one else capable of defeating the oldest son of the Lion Blooms. Adam puts his hand on his face and asks if Damien can really defeat the eldest son, who is known to be a genius. Damien admits he is highly skilled, but before he can finish, a soldier with a ponytail interrupts, saying they can't trust him. The soldier insists that rumors are often exaggerated. Adam agrees with him, and the ponytailed soldier, Ernst Howitz, adds that Miss Chelsea will bring the perfect candidate. The other soldiers in the room nod in agreement, saying she has been away for a month searching for the ideal fighter to face Michael Lionbloom and will be returning soon. Adam listens silently. Another soldier adds that Miss Chelsea passed all of Duke Adam's tests with ease, so she will surely bring back an excellent knight. Adam finally says they make reasonable points. The three soldiers smirk confidently, while Damien grows furious and silently curses them, thinking they have ruined his plan. Adam opens his arms and tells Damien that his men hold a different opinion, then asks what he intends to do now. Internally, Damien knows Adam just wants to see how he will react to this situation, so he decides to show them his strength. He firmly declares that they are completely wrong. One of the soldiers loses his composure. Damien claims that Miss Chelsea will never find someone as capable as him, and that if they truly wish to win the duel, they must choose him. Ernst asks how he can make such a claim when he doesn't even know who she will bring. Raising his finger, Damien says he can prove his words by blocking Ernst's ultimate move. Ernst grows furious. Damien smirks confidently and challenges him to use his ultimate attack, promising that if he can block it, he will prove his worth. Ernst silently curses, thinking that Damien is underestimating him. He immediately asks Duke Adam for permission to teach Damien a lesson. Adam, finding the situation interesting, grants permission. At the training grounds, Damien and Ernst stand across from each other. From behind, Victor asks Damien what is happening, saying he thought Damien came here to negotiate with Duke Adam. Damien, while warming up, shrugs and says it just happened, advising Victor to stay back. Victor looks worried, thinking Damien is in danger after seeing the powerful aura around Ernst. Adam orders Ernst to begin. Ernst acknowledges, gripping his spear tightly. He strikes it against the ground and tells Damien to get on his knees and beg if he wishes to be forgiven. Damien yawns and says he's tired of waiting. Ernst replies coldly that he will make sure to teach Damien a lesson. He begins gathering his energy, and the air starts to shift. Damien realizes Ernst is preparing his ultimate attack and turns serious, wondering if he might have pushed him too far. As Ernst changes his stance, he declares that he will eliminate Damien. He leaps toward Damien with full force. Damien thinks he expected this kind of move from a mid-ranked soldier. As the spear approaches, he focuses and brings his sword forward to block it. Just as he analyzes Ernst's aim, a dagger appears near his body and vanishes instantly, breaking his concentration. In that moment, Ernst's spear lands a strike, and Damien's sword snaps into two pieces. Ernst smirks, thinking Damien fell for his trick. Unfortunately, as the strike lands, Damien falls back. Victor shouts his name in panic, while Adam stands stunned at the sight. Damien steadies himself before falling to the ground. Surprised, Ernst grits his teeth and wonders how Damien managed to endure his surprise attack. Adam and his knight are stunned to see Damien still standing, while Damien lets out a heavy breath and asks if the representative position now belongs to him. In the next scene, Victor happily hugs Damien tightly. Victor quickly asks if Damien is okay, saying he thought something bad had happened to him. Damien pushes him away, saying he feels pain. Meanwhile, Adam approaches from behind, clapping and praising Damien's capabilities. He admits that he initially doubted Damien, but now realizes he is highly capable. He turns to his vassals and announces that Damien Haxon has proven his worth, and as promised, he will choose Damien Haxon as his representative. Ernst tries to protest, but Adam silences him with a cold glare, warning him not to ruin his good mood. Ernst reluctantly acknowledges this, while Damien smirks confidently, standing tall with his broken sword. Ernst, still trembling, wonders how this happened when he was sure his attack would land. He grows angry, clenching his fists. Damien thinks Ernst is being treated unfairly by Adam. He admits Ernst is skilled, but unfortunately, he met the wrong opponent. Damien notes that his own level is well above middle class, but he had to act carefully because only low-class fighters can participate in the duel. He intentionally fought in a way that would fool anyone watching. Damien recalls the moment when he blocked Ernst's attack using his mana, realizing that if he hadn't done that, things could have gone badly. Adam watches Damien silently, then approaches him. He mentions that Damien must have internal injuries that cannot be ignored. He raises his hand and activates the ring on his finger. A small portal forms in front of them, and Damien instantly recognizes it as a subspace magic tool. Adam reaches into the portal and pulls out a box. He opens it, saying it's a gift for Damien. Damien looks at it curiously. Adam explains that the object inside is called the balance pill, which he acquired from the alchemy school after paying a heavy price. Damien thinks it's a jackpot, realizing the item will enhance his physical abilities just like the supplements he used before. Adam hands the item to Damien, explaining that while knights usually use it for training, it can also heal internal injuries. Damien thanks him casually. Adam places a hand on his shoulder and says he looks forward to working with him in the future. Damien smiles and happily acknowledges. The next day, at the Gold Pixie estate, Damien stretches his body as he walks through a corridor. He places a hand on his chest and feels that his injuries have completely healed overnight thanks to the pill. He enters a room filled with training weapons. He admits he didn't notice it yesterday, but now realizes the duchy possesses excellent training equipment. He smiles, thinking he will use these tools to train himself further. Suddenly, his eyes widen when someone calls out, asking if he is Damien Haxon. Damien confirms and demands to know who he is. The man laughs and introduces himself as Pable. He gestures to the two knights beside him, referring to them as his blood brothers. Standing together, Pable proudly announces that they are also participants in the upcoming duel. Damien asks if that's true, and Pable instantly confirms. He adds that Damien was lucky yesterday since they were training outside at the time. Otherwise, it would have been them teaching him a lesson instead of Ernst. Damien frowns, while Pabel confidently declares that participating in a duel against the Lion Blooms is a crucial task that will determine the duchy's fate. He adds that he hopes Damien won't drag them down with what he calls a useless ability. Pabel then irritably tells Damien to leave so they can continue training in peace. Damien shrugs and begins walking away. As he walks, he thinks that it's good he met them because he had been curious about the duchy's knights and their capabilities, and now he's able to assess them firsthand. Meanwhile, Pabel orders his brothers to take their positions. He exhales deeply, then assumes his stance, calling it starting position, immovable Akalanatha. His ponytailed comrade charges at him with secret move, ascending phoenix. Their training weapons clash with force. The ponytailed knight mentions it's their 98th battle and declares that this time he will be the winner. Pabel responds sarcastically, and as both of them grow tired, their bodies begin trembling. Still, Pabel focuses and swings his training sword left and right. His opponent dodges, then spots an opening and strikes. Pabel counters the blow with his forehead. The ponytailed knight starts sweating, admitting that he expected Pabel to predict his attack and block it with his head. The ponytailed knight bows deeply and says he has learned something new today. Pabel praises his effort and says there's no victory between them today. Their other companion, a knight with a hair bun, steps forward and requests to fight next, saying his body is itching for battle. Pabel replies that he needs to rest before facing him. The ponytailed knight and the one with the hair bun lean closer to Pabel. One of them says that with the duel only a month away, if they continue training like this, they'll get great results. The other nods in agreement. Pabel grins and says they'll defeat the Lion Blooms and bring honor to the duchy. All three of them raise their swords and shout, "All for one for all," as they smirk proudly. Victor approaches Damien, who stands silently observing the trio from a distance. Victor asks what's wrong and wonders who the three are. Damien clenches his fists in frustration and mutters that they're doomed. Victor looks confused and asks what he means. Damien explains that there's no way he can win the duel alongside those fools. Adam laughs loudly while sarcastically saying that this doesn't fit well with the image of a high-class knight. Jael insists it doesn't bother him at all. Adam teases him, saying he can be honest with him, but Jael replies that he truly means it. Adam recalls the previous night when Damien came to meet him. Damien thanked him for the offer, but requested to train alone, and Adam agreed. In the present, Adam laughs again, noting that Damien even refused to train under Jael Heimlich. Adam admits Damien is quite an interesting person, but Jael remains silent. Adam then asks Jael for his opinion on Damien. Jael responds that Damien is an impressive young man, explaining that he used mana to block Ernst's strike, something not everyone can do. Adam asks for Jael's opinion regarding the upcoming duel, wondering if they can really win against the House of Lionbloom. Jael replies that for now, it's difficult to say. He explains that the duel will involve 3 participants, and whichever side wins 2 matches will be victorious. Therefore, it doesn't matter if Damien performs well on his own. All members must contribute. Adam rises from his seat, acknowledging Jael's words, and walks away. He says that their other knights must also perform well and asks if they're training properly. Jael replies that Sir Vincenzo, a middle-class knight, is overseeing their training, so there's nothing to worry about. Outside, leaves fall gently from a tree, and one lands on Damien's cheek as he stands beneath it. He looks annoyed, thinking there's a major problem he hadn't anticipated. Standing at the training site, he observes Pabel and his group sparring. He notes that they are not only foolish but also in poor shape, only appearing strong from the outside. Damien thinks they are destined to lose the duel. Damien lets out a low hum, then holds his head, saying he needs to step in. Victor doesn't understand what he means. Damien walks forward and calls out to Pabel and his companions, addressing them as idiots. The ponytailed knight reacts, wondering aloud if Damien really called them idiots. Damien straps on his arm guards and leg guards, telling them he wants to have a sparring match. Pabel smirks and admits Damien has guts to challenge them after seeing their skills. He agrees to fight and declares that he will be the first to accept the challenge. Damien watches him closely and says he doesn't want to fight just one of them. He wants all 3 to come at him simultaneously. After a brief pause, the 3 tremble in anger. Pabel calls Damien arrogant and yells his agreement. He and his companions throw away their training swords. Pabel admits that this goes against the code of knights, but says that when dealing with a man like Damien, fighting is the best solution. All three rush toward Damien with their fists, but Damien doesn't flinch. Moments later, Pabel opens his eyes in confusion, instantly sitting up and wondering what just happened. He notices his companions lying nearby, sound asleep. From behind, Damien asks Pabel if he's awake, and Pabel turns to see him. Damien calls their performance pathetic. Victor, standing behind, holds his head and asks what Damien is doing by getting himself into trouble again. Damien replies that he was just teaching the Duke's Knights a lesson. Victor, surprised, asks if they really are the Duke's Knights. Meanwhile, Pabel holds his head, trying to recall what happened. He remembers that they all attacked Damien together, but can't remember anything afterward. 5 minutes earlier, Pabel and his companions had charged at Damien together. Damien easily dodged their attacks, then raised his hand and swiftly knocked down Pabel's comrades. Pabel had rushed in with full force, but Damien struck him directly, landing a precise punch to the chin and following it up with several blows that knocked him unconscious. Pabel finally realizes they were all defeated, and that Damien managed to overwhelm all three of them effortlessly. As his companions get back up, Pabel thinks to himself that Damien is a beast. Damien approaches them calmly and says he didn't even break a sweat. Pabel and his group kneel before Damien. Damien asks who has been training them. Pabel nervously answers that they've been trained by Sir Sebastian Vincenzo, a mid-class knight. Damien asks if he's truly a mid-class knight, and Pabel confirms. Damien sighs and wonders how a mid-class knight could produce such weak training. He wants to tell them to quit training under him, but decides against causing unnecessary conflict. Instead, Damien instructs them to come spar with him daily after their regular training with Vincenzo. Pabel looks shocked. He scratches his head, explaining that if Vincenzo finds out, he'll suspect something strange. Damien assures them that they won't get hurt no matter how hard he hits them. Pabel suddenly realizes that despite being struck earlier, they are completely fine. Sitting in confusion, he asks how that's possible. Damien calmly explains that he learned a very specific way to fight in the past. Victor is startled as Damien continues his story. He explains that long ago, there was a man who wandered across the continent reforming criminals. People called him the character corrector. His method of reform was simple. He would discipline the criminals for an hour without rest, and if it didn't work, he would continue for another hour. According to legend, the longest he ever continued was 512 hours. Eventually, the character corrector began to feel pity for his injured victims and sought a way to discipline others without causing serious harm. Through years of mastery, he developed a technique called traceless strike. Damien says that's the same technique he just used on them, a secret art that causes pain without leaving a single visible mark. He asks if they understand what he means. Damien then questions how weak and unskilled they are, while the three remain silent, listening intently. He raises his finger and tells them not to worry. They still have a month to prepare for the duel. Confidently, he adds that he will make all of them strong and useful before then. Pabel and his companions watch Damien in disbelief, while Victor holds his head, wondering what Damien is planning. Damien tells them it's time for their training to begin. Just then, one of Adam's attendants approaches Damien and says he has finally found him. Damien wonders why he's there. The attendant informs him that Duke Adam is looking for him. Damien asks about the reason, and the attendant hesitates before replying that Lady Chelsea has returned. Lady Chelsea greets Adam, addressing him as her father, and announces that she has returned. Ernst smirks, thinking that Chelsea has come back safe and sound. Adam calmly notes that it has been a month and asks Chelsea if she has found a knight to proxy for their duel. She smirks, nods, and turns her eyes toward the knight kneeling behind her. The knight rises as Adam looks him over closely. The knight greets the Duke and introduces himself as Guillermo Blackwing, the wild beast. Adam's knights begin whispering among themselves. One wonders aloud if he is the famous mercenary. He adds that he has heard Guillermo participated in the Aclaren Kingdom's war, where he easily take down the low classes. Adam admits he's heard a lot about Guillermo, and happily adds that Guillermo has already earned his name by running wild like a beast in war. Guillermo laughs, saying he didn't expect the Apple Kingdom to know about him. Chelsea stands and reveals that Guillermo has sworn loyalty to her and promised to take part in the upcoming duel. She confidently tells Adam that he will surely defeat Michael Lionbloom. The Gold Pixie Knights whisper among themselves, agreeing that if Guillermo participates, he will indeed beat Michael Lionbloom. Another knight says Michael Lionbloom is still honing himself toward perfection, but Guillermo has already reached it. Adam forces a smile, then grows cold. He says that although it's good news, there is a problem. Chelsea asks curiously what he means. Adam replies that he hasn't introduced the representative for the duel yet. Chelsea and Guillermo turn back, and Adam announces Damien's full name as Damien enters the room. Chelsea looks at Damien with cold eyes and asks her father what he means, since she already told him to wait for her. Adam replies that she mentioned it, but he didn't promise to wait. With a strange expression, Chelsea asks him to change the representative. Adam narrows his brows and says he will consider it. Chelsea shouts in anger, telling Adam not to think about it because she has never even heard Damien's name. Damien, standing behind her, guesses she must be her daughter. She looks toward Damien and says it's obvious to choose Guillermo rather than a man with no name. Damien thinks Chelsea is treating him like a nobody. Guillermo watches Damien with a grin as Damien notices him and begins wondering about him. Adam straightforwardly denies Chelsea's request. He admits that Guillermo is well known, but says Damien was strong enough to block Ernst's ultimate attack. Ernst trembles in embarrassment. Chelsea exhales heavily and accuses Adam of refusing to acknowledge her judgment. She says it's a perfect example of how he ignores both her and her mother. Adam grows serious and scolds her for speaking in that tone in front of their guests. Chelsea lets out a sarcastic laugh and apologizes, adding that she is simply tired from her journey. The air between Adam and Chelsea grows tense, and Damien guesses they must have grudges against one another. Adam sighs and waves his hand, saying he will discuss the matter with the others and ordering her to stop arguing. Suddenly, Guillermo laughs loudly and heavily. Adam does not understand why. Guillermo tells Adam they don't need to decide with words since they are all men. Chelsea watches him closely while Jael calls his behavior rude. Guillermo approaches Damien and says that the strongest person should be the representative. He proposes a duel to let the victor take the place. Chelsea yells at Guillermo, asking what he is doing since she already told him not to speak. Adam calmly replies that Guillermo is not wrong and asks Damien for his opinion. Damien thinks Adam wants to test him again and finds it annoying, but he already knows he must show his abilities to settle the matter. He smirks and agrees with Guillermo that the strongest person should represent them, but he adds that fighting isn't necessary. Guillermo grows confused as Damien reaches out his hand, apparently to confirm something. He asks Guillermo how they should decide who is the strongest right here. Guillermo watches him silently, then starts to laugh, warning that it won't be his fault if he pulls Damien's arm. Damien jokingly says that's terrifying. He smirks coldly and tells Guillermo he will stop once Guillermo's shoulder dislocates. Guillermo smirks back, wondering aloud if Damien really can do it. Guillermo reaches for Damien's hand with full strength, but before he can do anything, Damien grabs his arm and slams him onto the floor. Everyone watches Damien with wide eyes. Damien shakes the dust off his hands while Chelsea stands stunned, trying to process what just happened. Jael thinks Damien is incredible, recalling that Guillermo tried to grab Damien's hand first. Damien instead used Guillermo's strength against him and slammed him down. Jael admits to himself that Damien is not only strong, but also highly skilled. He narrows his brows as Guillermo curses Damien. Guillermo asks Damien how he could humiliate him in front of others. Damien smirks, having expected this, and tells Guillermo he was tougher than he thought. He really might have dislocated his shoulder. Guillermo grows furious, declaring he will destroy him right now. He swings both of his axes in a rage. Chelsea yells his name to stop him, but Guillermo charges at Damien, declaring he will teach him a lesson. Suddenly, a green aura surrounds Guillermo, and he widens his eyes. Jael yells for him to stop and demands to know how he dares to swing his weapon in front of Duke Adam. He coldly asks if Guillermo wishes to die. Guillermo is unable to move and starts coughing as his body trembles. Damien thinks Jael's aura is incredible to cause this much pressure, exactly what he would expect from a high-class knight. Jael declares that he will let this matter go only because Chelsea is present, while Chelsea grits her teeth. Jael grips his sword and warns Guillermo that there will be no second chances. Guillermo collapses to the ground, breathing heavily. Adam stands up and clasps his hands to draw everyone's attention. He announces that there was a private misunderstanding and declares that it's best for Damien to remain the representative. Ernst speaks up, saying it wasn't a fair fight. Adam hums in confusion. Ernst explains that Guillermo hasn't yet recovered from the exhaustion caused by his long journey, which gave Damien an advantage. Damien curses Ernst silently. Ernst adds that Guillermo is a knight who specializes in weapon combat, so his true ability can't be judged through hand-to-hand fighting. Chelsea begins to speak, stuttering at first, and agrees with Ernst. She adds that they should compare their abilities fairly, not like this, but through a proper duel. Adam, disappointed, tells Chelsea to stop pressing the issue. Chelsea raises her voice and addresses him as Your Excellency, but Adam slams his hand on the table and shouts for her to stop boasting about her own shortcomings. Chelsea listens quietly, lowers her head, and immediately admits her discourtesy. Her body starts trembling, and Ernst clenches his fists in anger. Damien raises his hand and asks Adam if he can add something. Adam nods and gives permission. Damien calmly asks if he can accept Chelsea's offer. Chelsea looks at him in surprise. Adam hums thoughtfully, wondering what Damien is planning. Later, outside in town, Victor asks Damien why he accepted the duel when he had nothing to lose by staying silent. Damien covers his ears with his fingers and says he has his reasons for everything, then stops Victor from speaking further. Victor protests, saying Damien just created trouble for himself. Damien notices a blacksmith shop and stops to look at it closely. He wonders aloud if this is the smithy Adam mentioned. Victor nods, saying he believes so. Damien recalls Adam's earlier words. Adam said he couldn't stop him, but since Damien's longsword broke during his fight with Ernst, he would have a new one made for him at the duchy's smithy. In the present, Damien smirks, thinking that although he could defeat Guillermo with just a training sword, he won't reject Adam's kindness. Inside the shop, a blacksmith notices them as Damien and Victor enter. Victor calmly explains that they're there under Duke Adam's orders and that he instructed them to choose a sword for young Master Damien. The blacksmith laughs, saying he already heard they would be coming, and invites them to follow him. Victor lets out a sound of awe as he sees the impressive collection of weapons. He comments that all of them look amazing. Damien agrees and asks Victor if he wants something for himself. Victor wonders aloud if he's really allowed to pick something expensive. Suddenly, Damien's eyes fall upon a sword. He wonders if it could really be the one. The blacksmith behind him asks if Damien finds that sword unique. The blacksmith explains that it was commissioned by a knight once employed at the duchy, but the knight had to leave urgently before the sword was completed, so the owner never received it. Damien smiles and asks if the knight gave him unified ringing steel to forge it. The blacksmith is startled and asks how Damien knows that. Damien recalls that the sword is similar to the one used by a legendary master known as the sword musician in the past. Damien picks up the sword and says he'll take it. The blacksmith looks surprised and asks how he can choose a sword without knowing what kind of metal unified ringing steel is. Damien nods and thinks to himself that unified ringing steel has a unique property. It pushes mana and creates energy waves, unlike other rare metals that simply amplify mana. Victor watches Damien from behind, holding a few weapons in his arms, while the sword in Damien's hand begins to emit a faint glow. Damien asks for the sword's name. The blacksmith pauses, lost in thought, then says that the knight who commissioned it planned to call it the 1,000-mile sword. The door opens, and Damien and Victor step out of the shop. Damien places his new sword into its scabbard. Suddenly, a maid appears and asks if Damien has found a weapon he likes, addressing him as Sir Damien. Damien and Victor turn to look at her. The maid bows respectfully, accompanied by 2 guards. She introduces herself as Rebecca, a servant of Lady Chelsea. Rebecca explains that Lady Chelsea has requested to meet Damien and asks if he wouldn't mind sparing some time. Damien replies that he doesn't have anything in particular to say to Chelsea. Rebecca smiles, saying that no one can be certain of that, and adds that Chelsea has more to offer than he might think. She hints that perhaps Damien will gain something valuable from the meeting. Damien grows serious, thinking Chelsea might be trying to manipulate him with kind words, but he also has something he wants to confirm. He hesitates, then finally agrees and tells Rebecca to lead the way. Later, they arrive at a restaurant. Rebecca explains that this restaurant is operated by Lady Chelsea herself and runs on a reservation-only basis, serving nobles exclusively. She adds that the entire restaurant has been cleared today just so Damien could come. Damien listens quietly as Rebecca stops in front of a door. Opening it, she tells him that Lady Chelsea is waiting inside and asks him to enter. As Damien steps inside, he wonders what kind of offer she intends to make, but freezes for a moment when he notices the scent in the air. He sees Chelsea while the room is filled with a faint purple aura. She looks up and says he's late, inviting him to sit. Damien sits across from Chelsea and asks why she called him. Chelsea notes that he quickly gets angry, and she suggests they talk once the food arrives. Damien watches her closely, then tells her to say it now because he doesn't want to waste his time. Chelsea smirks. She says that if it has come to this, then she has no choice, but adds she has only one condition. That is, he should give up the representative position. Damien assumes that she doesn't trust Guillermo, but Chelsea tells him not to be delusional because when Guillermo picks up his axe, someone like Damien is nothing compared to him. She adds that she is only demanding this because she wants to save her strength in preparation for the duel with the Marquis family. She states it will cause problems if she gets injured in a pointless duel. Damien thinks that she makes a valid point. He asks what is in it for him and why he should grant her request. Chelsea says if he steps down, she will fulfill all his wishes. Damien asks if she knows what he wants. Chelsea instantly says that a country noble like him can only wish for money, fame, and things like that. Damien feels uncomfortable as he thinks that she judges others so carelessly and calls her behavior arrogant in his head. Damien argues aloud, wondering if these things are granted by Adam. Chelsea doesn't flinch and adds it seems that way at the moment, but presses him to think about it. She looks down at the hourglass. The upper half is nearly empty. As Damien finishes his sentence telling Chelsea to go and tell her father, the upper half empties completely. Chelsea orders Damien to tell Adam he will step down while purple energy flows from her toward Damien. Damien sits quietly with his head down. He raises his head and firmly says he won't tell him. Chelsea startles and can't believe what just happened. She says she didn't plan for things to go this way. Damien smirks and thinks that she is surprised it didn't affect him. She used a charm she calls charm fragrance. He recalls that charm fragrance is a type of dark magic which creates false affection to control people, but he is aware of this magic from his previous life, so he sensed it the moment he entered the room. He admits internally that at that concentration anyone would be turned into a servant within an hour, but his authority of greed absorbed the magic completely. He stands and asks what she means by it not going according to her plan. She stutters as she begins to speak and asks why he is rejecting her proposal when she promised to give him everything he wants. Damien walks away, saying he doesn't need her help, and adds that what he wants isn't something she can give him. She starts shouting, asking him curiously what he wants. He tells her he wants his family's happiness. Chelsea doesn't understand him. Damien starts walking toward the door, saying he is leaving, and tells Chelsea to give his message to Guillermo. Prepare well for the duel. Chelsea gets frustrated and says that his family must be very important to him. Damien stops. Chelsea rises and tells him to step down from the representative position. If he doesn't, she will send someone to destroy House Hexen. Damien instantly grabs her neck and slams her onto the table, making a loud noise before she can finish her sentence. She starts coughing, then asks him how dare he grab her like that. But Damien does not remain quiet and looks at her coldly. Chelsea yells at him to release her. Two knights barge in and ask about the loud noise. As they notice Chelsea struggling, both of them move forward with their swords drawn. Damien releases Chelsea. Damien immediately strikes at the two knights. Both of them fall to the ground. While Chelsea still coughs, Damien suggests she take a potion now so she will not end up dying and addresses her by her full name. Damien admits he wants to eliminate her right now, but is holding himself back. He tells her to look at the soldiers on the ground, trembling, and warns her that this might happen to her next. He leaves while Chelsea trembles. Rebecca enters the room with a sad face, rushes to Chelsea, and asks if she is all right. Chelsea coldly states that Damien threatened her and swears she will make him suffer. She shouts the name Mustang Fury. He appears instantly and announces his arrival with an introduction. Chelsea asks him why the charm fragrance didn't work on Damien. Mustang mutters nervously that he doesn't know. He adds that there are rare cases of people with strong immunity to dark magic, implying that Damien is one of them. Chelsea slaps him across the face, calling him a fool, and he groans in pain. She asks where Guillermo is. Mustang answers that Guillermo is cooling his head at the tavern after today's incident. Chelsea snaps in rage, saying the duel is tomorrow. She calls him a madman, and Mustang startles. Chelsea, frustrated, asks Mustang if he is really sure that Guillermo can defeat Damien. Mustang clenches his fists and assures her, reminding her that Guillermo is the masterpiece of Yulon. He adds that he has never seen a knight with as much dark magic affinity as Guillermo. Mustang leans in and firmly tells Chelsea to wait patiently, saying that Yulon will help her become the next duke. Chelsea glares at him coldly, hoping he will keep his word and warning that if he does not, he will die first. Mustang acknowledges this and says he will keep it in mind. Meanwhile, Damien, standing by the window, hears the whole conversation between the two. At night, a light is turned on inside a room. In the room, Victor is sleeping while holding the weapons he got from the smithy. Damien is sitting in the same room, observing his new sword. He says the name, Yura, in his head, and the sword begins to emit a faint blue energy. He thinks he didn't expect to encounter it again and silently curses the black mages. He notes that Chelsea is connected to the black mages, realizing that the aura he felt from Guillermo back then was also dark magic. He flicks his sword, and a vast amount of blue energy radiates from it. The vibration causes an hourglass to fall on Victor's head, but Victor continues sleeping. Damien holds his new sword and thinks that instead of explaining everything to Adam, he should prove it himself in tomorrow's duel. When the time of the duel arrives, Guillermo steps forward and lets out a heavy roar. Pabel and his companions stand on the sidelines. Pabel explains that this is Guillermo, and he certainly looks strong. The ponytailed knight asks Pabel who will win. Pabel answers that if they judge by reputation alone, then it should be Guillermo. The ponytailed knight clenches his fists and remarks that if Guillermo wins, they'll finally be freed from Damien. He recalls the harsh training Damien put them through in the past 2 days, and the knight with the hair bun trembles at the memory. The ponytailed knight mutters that Damien did nothing but beat them and clearly seemed to enjoy it. Pabel closes his eyes, quietly hoping Damien will lose, but admits to himself that he doesn't see that happening at all. Ernst observes Damien closely as he stands across from Guillermo, ready for the duel. Guillermo remarks that he's surprised Damien didn't run away. Damien shrugs, saying he slept well and his shoulders are still a bit stiff, but Guillermo accuses him of just pretending to be calm. Finally, Adam takes his seat, saying that he's the one who was late. He announces that whoever wins today will take the position of representative. He looks toward Chelsea and states that he expects everyone to respect the outcome. Chelsea smirks and quietly tells her father to enjoy the moment while he can because Guillermo will be the victor. Adam holds up a white handkerchief and declares the duel to begin as he throws it into the air. Guillermo and Damien raise their weapons. Guillermo strides toward Damien, calling his name while swinging both of his axes, which glow with purple energy. He tells Damien that accepting this duel was his biggest mistake. Guillermo grips his axes tightly and says that now he will show why he is called the Wild Beast. He charges at Damien with full strength, intent on striking him down. Damien, however, watches his movement carefully. He flicks his sword, and it begins to emit bright blue energy rings. The blue energy spreads out between them, forming layers of circles. Guillermo watches in confusion. As the energy intensifies, it strikes Guillermo with immense force, sending him flying backward. The arena fills with smoke. Guillermo coughs and demands to know what that was. Chelsea and Rebecca exchange anxious looks, while Adam comments with interest on Damien's strange yet powerful technique. Jael, too, watches curiously, wondering what kind of ability it is. Guillermo becomes furious. He rushes toward Damien in rage, mocking him for calling himself a knight and calling his technique a cheap trick. But then, he suddenly notices more blue energy circles flying toward him. One of them hits his shoulder, making him groan in pain. Guillermo breathes heavily, sweat covering his face, until another circle strikes his face, causing him to groan again. As the energy fades, he wipes his mouth and curses Damien again. Damien holds his sword upright as blue energy circles spin around it. He tells Guillermo that playtime is over. Then, placing the sword's tip on the ground, he releases a massive surge of blue energy. As the energy rushes toward Guillermo, dark energy bursts from Guillermo's body in response. All the spectators, including Adam, are stunned by Guillermo's sudden change. Adam wonders aloud why Guillermo is acting that way. Chelsea grits her teeth in fear, realizing that this should not be happening. Damien approaches him and says that his true identity has been exposed. Damien looks down at him coldly and calls him a fake knight. Adam, with wide eyes, wonders aloud if Guillermo is truly a fake knight. On the other hand, Victor and Pable's group stand speechless. Damien sheathes his sword and explains that Guillermo is a fake knight who enhanced his physical strength and mana through dark magic. The staff of the Gold Pixie family are stunned and whisper among themselves, wondering how something like this could have happened. They discuss that if the church finds out, they will all be in trouble, and add that they need to investigate the matter properly. Meanwhile, Rebecca, who is standing beside them, quietly leaves. Adam frowns and asks Damien if he knew Guillermo's true identity from the start. Damien bows, confirms it, and apologizes for not reporting it sooner. His expression sharpens as he explains that he wanted to uncover the people behind the plot first. Adam feels a chill run down his spine as he repeats Damien's words. Damien states that dark mages have infiltrated the house of Gold Pixie. He then confidently tells Adam that the person who connected them is Chelsea, his own daughter. Chelsea startles and nervously denies it, telling Adam she has nothing to do with any of this. Adam buries his face in his hand, clearly under stress. He grits his teeth in anger and tells Chelsea that he also doesn't want to believe it, but the circumstances make it difficult to deny. He demands to know how she could bring such corruption into his house. His eyes turn cold as he wonders aloud why the guards aren't doing anything. He points at Chelsea and orders the guards to seize her along with anyone tied to her, instructing them to throw them in the dungeon and uncover the full truth. Chelsea yells to her father that she is innocent and that it's all a mistake. The guards capture Guillermo, and some of them move toward Chelsea with their swords drawn. Chelsea panics, realizing that if she's arrested, everything will be exposed. She yells at her knights to protect her. The knights respond immediately and swing their swords to counter the guards. Adam exhales heavily in frustration and orders Jael to arrest Chelsea immediately. Jael bows and acknowledges the command. He begins walking toward Chelsea as her knights, already exhausted, struggle to stand. Jael activates his power and orders everyone to clear the way. Chelsea's knights stop moving, frozen under the pressure of his aura. One of them admits silently that they are no match for Jael. The brown-haired knight yells at Chelsea to run, saying they will hold them back. Chelsea acknowledges and starts to flee. Jael sighs, saying it's a shame, and draws his sword. A burst of green energy surges as he swings it. Chelsea widens her eyes and falls to the ground, covering her ears as a loud sound echoes through the hall. Her body trembles as she peeks out and sees her knights collapsing to the ground, defeated. She watches in shock and fear as the scene unfolds. Her breathing quickens. Jael looks at her with cold eyes and begins walking toward her. Chelsea mutters for him to stay away and immediately turns toward Ernst, calling out to him in desperation. She begs for his help, shouting his name again. Ernst grits his teeth, calling Chelsea's name in his thoughts. Finally, he steps between Chelsea and Jael. From a distance, Damien watches and thinks Ernst is a fool. Jael addresses Ernst firmly, acknowledging that, as a mid-class knight, he has contributed greatly to the growth of the Gold Pixie family and that Duke Adam holds him in high regard. Ernst's body trembles as he faces Jael, but he still stands his ground and begins to move forward, ready to attack. Jael warns that if Ernst chooses to protect Chelsea, he will be taken down on the spot. Jael glares coldly at him, intimidating him completely. Ernst groans in hopelessness and collapses to the ground, dropping his spear. Chelsea whispers Ernst's name and then is seized by the guards. She calls out to her father, begging him to listen to her explanation and insisting that she hasn't done anything wrong. She tries to speak further, but Adam cuts her off, calling her a useless fool. He yells that because of her, their entire house might face ruin, adding that she has dragged them all into a pit of disgrace. Chelsea murmurs, calling out to her father again, but Adam ignores her and continues. He says that even now, She only cares about herself. His expression darkens as he admits that bringing her into the family was his biggest mistake. Tears fall from Chelsea's eyes as she cries out, denying his words and pleading for him to look at her. Adam coldly says he doesn't want to hear another word and orders his guards to take her away. The guards begin dragging her away while the other staff members watch with pity. When Chelsea looks toward Damien, she starts struggling more and glares at him with cold, furious eyes. She continues trying to speak while being dragged away. Damien smirks slightly as he watches her go. A few days later, in the dungeon of the House of Gold Pixie, Jael is getting information from Chelsea's subordinates. Jael notes internally that Chelsea expanded her influence in the duchy with the help of dark mages. In his thoughts, he questions why she would do such a thing. Meanwhile, she slowly sits up and curses as she recalls her father's cold expression. She grits her teeth, admitting internally that he is the reason she is in this situation. Her thoughts drift back to her childhood. She remembers that she only wanted to be acknowledged and recognized by her father as his daughter. That was all she ever wanted. She recalls the moment when her father threw away the handmade flower garland she gave him. In the present, tears fill her eyes as she wonders why he looked at her with such cold eyes. A guard arrives with food. He sets the plate down and tells Chelsea that he has brought her meal. Chelsea quietly glances at the plate. She picks up a piece of bread and starts eating. She thinks to herself that she can't let it end like this. No matter what, she needs to survive. She bites into the bread, anger burning in her eyes, while the guard who brought the food watches her coldly. On the other hand, Damien moves his shoulder while walking down the hallway. He sighs in relief, admitting that today's training is finally over. Victor notices Damien approaching and tells him that Adam is looking for him. Damien looks confused. Inside Adam's office, Adam suddenly changes his tone, saying they have decided to seek help from the Order regarding Chelsea's case. Damien replies that he thought they would continue investigating on their own. Adam nods and admits he feels ashamed after needing Damien's help. He adds that they have lost all of their mages, holding his head in frustration. Damien is left stunned and asks if that's really true. Adam regretfully confirms it, saying they captured all of Chelsea's aides but failed to apprehend a single dark mage. He adds that he thought it was right to inform Damien of this personally. Damien recalls the faces of Rebecca and Mustang, and wondering if they have truly escaped. He questions whether he should have gotten more involved. Adam explains that, to avoid any misunderstanding with the Order, they have decided to hand over all matters related to the dark mages. Damien asks if Chelsea has said anything about their identities. Adam shakes his head, saying that despite harsh interrogation, she has never spoken a word, admitting that she is remarkably strong-willed. He admits that Chelsea wasn't always like this, and that something in her past must have changed her. After a brief pause, Adam explains that Chelsea's mother was a commoner. When he was young, he went hunting with his knights and met her. Before long, she became pregnant with Chelsea. Initially, he denied responsibility, calling it a single mistake. Later, he found it disgraceful that a commoner carried his blood, so when she and the child came seeking him, he turned them away. Adam regretfully continues, saying that time passed, and one day, curiosity about the child he had abandoned began to grow in his heart. He ordered an investigation and discovered that the mother had died from the plague, leaving Chelsea alone. He decided then to bring her to the duchy. Adam laughs bitterly, saying it was unlike him, and wonders aloud why he did it. Damien firmly tells him that maybe it was because Chelsea was his family. Adam frowns heavily, repeating the word family. He admits that perhaps Chelsea truly wanted to become part of one. Looking toward the ceiling, he says that maybe, in her desperation for his approval, she went too far. Adam lets out a regretful sigh, saying she could have lived a normal life as a noble woman. After a short silence, Adam straightens up, but suddenly, a loud noise interrupts them. A servant rushes in, calling out to Adam. Adam asks what's wrong, and the servant hesitates before saying something terrible has happened. Chelsea have died in her cell. Adam's expression hardens. Dirty clothes spill onto the floor as a servant scolds Damien for once again failing to separate his laundry. Irritated, the servant complains about having to clean up after him and asks why his socks are always inside out. Damien casually shrugs, saying that's simply how they come off. The scene then shifts to a man standing by a window, gazing over the city. For days have passed since Chelsea Goldpixie's death. The questioning of her associates has ended, and although 2 people have been imprisoned for endangering the family, for now, the immediate threat to the Goldpixie household appears to have passed. Yet the situation is far from over. Elsewhere, Sir Ernst Howitt stumbles through a dark alley, overwhelmed by guilt. A memory surfaces of a young Chelsea happily making a flower crown, believing flowers carry a kind of magic that brings joy. Back in the present, Ernst curses himself for failing to protect her. Suddenly, Rebecca appears and calls out to him. Enraged, Ernst grabs her and demands to know how she dares to show her face, blaming her for Chelsea's death. As Rebecca struggles to speak, she makes a desperate offer. She wants revenge. Rebecca claims the official story is false, but died after enduring severe mistreatment. She insists the truth was concealed to protect the Duke's reputation. Ernst hesitates, realizing the claim might be possible. Rebecca then explains that although she originally approached Chelsea with her own motives, the lady treated her kindly, like a sister. Because of that, she intends to seek revenge on the ducal family and asks for Ernst's help. After Ernst leaves in shock, a man emerges from the shadows behind Rebecca. He reveals that his charm magic helped manipulate Ernst by exploiting his emotional attachment to Chelsea. Rebecca agrees that once someone's weakness is found, controlling them becomes much easier. The man laughs, noting that Ernst still has no idea who truly caused Chelsea's death. Their conversation soon turns to a new target, Damien Haxon. Having confirmed reports that Damien killed Agito, they believe the moment is perfect to strike, since Damien remains unaware of their true identities. With the Duke's house likely lowering its guard, the conspirators decide to use this opportunity to eliminate him. The scene shifts to Damien, hidden behind a pillar. 3 fighters silently watch him. Using the darkness as cover, the 3 men rush into attack. But Damien reacts instantly. With swift and precise movements, he counters their strikes, disarms one attacker, and slams another into the wall. Within seconds, all 3 are on the ground. Disappointed, Damien remarks that they could not even land a single hit. The men groan and apologize, revealing that this was actually a training session. Damien calls for a break and reminds them that the duel at the Marquis's house is only 2 days away. There will be no more sparring, only time to reflect on what he has taught them. The fighters leave confused, unsure what they were meant to learn. Watching them go, Damien sighs, hoping at least one of them eventually understands the real purpose of the training. Later, the scene moves to a vast plain where the army of Duke Goldpixie stands under green banners. Damien rides alongside a hooded man who asks for his opinion of the troops. Damien calmly evaluates them, noting their strong equipment and impressive individual skill. An older knight named Gaul soon approaches with news that a messenger from the Mercury side has arrived, requesting a meeting between representatives before the duel. The Duke agrees, and they head toward the meeting point. Meanwhile, in the opposing camp under the banner of Marquis Lion Bloom, chaos unfolds inside a tent. A furious father tries to wake his son, Michael Lion Bloom, who is still sleeping despite the importance of the duel. Michael lazily complains about being disturbed and shows no interest in attending the meeting. Frustrated, his father storms out, declaring that he will face Damien himself if necessary. Hearing Damien's name instantly wakes Michael. He sits up, suddenly serious, asking why that man is with the Duke's household. When his father confirms that Damien Haxon will represent them in the duel, Michael quickly prepares himself, gripping his sword with renewed excitement. Soon, both sides meet in neutral territory between the camps. Damien arrives with the Duke's group, including Gaul. Tension fills the air as the 2 families exchange sharp remarks. Gaul greets the Marquis respectfully, reaffirming his loyalty to the Duke's house. The Marquis responds with a thin smile before turning his attention to Damien. When he realizes this is the man who defeated his knights and humiliated his son, anger flashes across his face. Despite himself, however, he feels a strange sense of unease. Something about Damien's potential is deeply unsettling. Across the field, Michael finally locks eyes with Damien. A chilling smile spreads across his face as anticipation builds. His grip tightens around his sword, and the tension of the upcoming duel fills the air. The tension on the field becomes intense as Michael suddenly points his sword at Damien Haxon, an act that breaks noble etiquette. Damien calmly steps forward with his own blade ready, standing composed as if facing a dangerous beast. Seeing an opportunity, the Duke in the green hood steps in and claims he cannot intervene in the situation. Although he would prefer to cancel the duel entirely, he decides to let it pass this time. However, in exchange, he announces that he will add several new conditions to the duel's reward. Michael's father immediately grows suspicious, knowing the Duke would never ignore such a provocation without gaining something in return. After a brief negotiation, the Marquis reluctantly accepts the new terms and calls for Michael. The two members of the Bloom family leave the meeting, while the Duke watches them with quiet satisfaction. Damien notes how cleverly the Duke used the moment to secure additional advantages. The Duke agrees but remains thoughtful, wondering why Michael suddenly reacted so strongly. He suspects the young man may have already awakened a heightened instinct, which makes the upcoming duel even more interesting. On the other side of the field, the Marquis angrily scolds Michael for drawing his sword and risking their family's reputation. However, Michael barely listens. He explains that Damien somehow sensed the attack before it even happened, yet remained calm and confident. For the first time, Michael admits he may have found an opponent capable of matching him. Seeing the excitement in his son's eyes, the Marquis realizes Michael is finally facing someone who truly challenges him. Michael then wonders if the new conditions were added because of his reckless move, earning another scolding from his father. Though the Marquis claims there is nothing to worry about. Soon, a green flag signals the start of the duel, and the announcer calls the first fighters from both sides to step forward. Securing the first victory will set the momentum for the entire match. From the Duke's camp, the first knight chosen is Fabian of the Viscount Vincenzo family. Encouraged by his father, Fabian confidently promises to win and restore the Duke's favor. Many spectators recognize his talent and expect a strong performance. Damien simply observes quietly. The Lionbloom family sends out their fighter, Ronald. When the two men meet at the center, Fabian proudly declares his name and lineage, demanding the same from his opponent. Ronald gives only a simple reply. Ronald mocks the Duke's side, saying their knights seem better at talking than fighting. Furious, Fabian launches the first attack with a rapid series of skilled strikes. The clash quickly intensifies, but Ronald calmly blocks each blow with steady and efficient movements. As Fabian grows more frustrated, his attacks become reckless. Ronald spots the opening and counters with a precise strike, knocking Fabian's weapon away and sending him to the ground. Ronald calmly declares the fight over. The announcer soon confirms the result. The first round goes to the Lionbloom family. The Duke's side falls silent as their promising knight lies defeated. The duel has only just begun, but the first blow to pride and morale clearly belongs to their rivals. The green flag waves, signaling the end of the first match. Damien watches calmly, having expected the outcome. The challenge had simply been too great for the young knight. The Duke in the green hood turns to Damien. With the first of 3 duels already lost, he suggests that Damien should step forward for the second match. However, an old advisor warns that even if Damien wins, the final duel will still belong to Michael, leaving no one capable of opposing him. The Duke acknowledges the concern, but Damien reveals he has another plan. Instead of stepping in himself, Damien chooses a knight named Pavel. The blue-haired knight is stunned by the decision. Damien reminds him of the intense training sessions they endured. He assures Pavel that the preparation had a purpose and that he can win. The other knights immediately support Pavel, chanting his name and boosting his confidence. The Duke doubts the decision, pointing out that Pavel has never been considered an exceptional fighter. Damien calmly explains his strategy. The sword style Pavel trained against was actually the Lionbloom family's signature technique. Through constant repetition, Pavel's body has learned to recognize and counter those moves almost instinctively. With trembling legs, Pavel steps onto the field. His opponent, a fierce knight from the opposing side, looks disappointed, having expected to face Damien instead. He declares he will finish the fight quickly. The duel begins with a powerful strike from his side, but Pavel blocks it by pure reflex. Surprised, he realizes he is stronger than he appears. As the fight continues, Pavel's confidence grows. His body reacts naturally to the familiar techniques, and he begins to notice weaknesses in his opponent's form. The training finally makes sense. Drawing on everything Damien taught him, Pavel breaks through his limits and delivers a decisive strike that wins the match. The crowd erupts in cheers as Pavel is declared the winner of the second duel. With the score now tied, the final match becomes inevitable. Michael Lyon-Bloom steps onto the field, confirming that the outcome now depends entirely on their duel. Damien calmly meets his gaze. Michael laughs with excitement, saying he has long waited for a worthy opponent. Damien responds that he has finally found someone capable of matching him in a fair fight. Michael dismisses the idea of equality but sincerely demands a battle that will not disappoint him. The scene briefly shifts to the Lyon-Bloom camp before the final duel. Pavel kneels on the ground. Overwhelmed with shame after his defeat, Michael's father orders him to stand, assuring him that he fought honorably against a stronger opponent. The father remains confident that their ultimate weapon, Michael, will secure victory. Still, a troubling thought lingers in his mind. Their knight, Huey, possessed superior technique, yet he was defeated as if every move had been predicted. Since the Lion Guard sword style is a closely guarded family secret, the possibility that someone understands it leaves him uneasy. Across the field, Michael feels an unfamiliar excitement. As a child, Michael once dreamed of becoming a legendary swordsman, thrilled by the joy of wielding his first wooden sword. But over time, every opponent proved disappointing, and victory became predictable. Eventually, he lost interest in fighting, until Damien Haxon appeared. Now, the decisive duel begins. Michael steps onto the field with excitement, asking Damien not to disappoint him. Their swords clash in a fierce exchange. Damien skillfully dodges and counters with calm precision, even sending Michael airborne with a well-timed strike. Michael presses forward with relentless attacks, but Damien leaves him no opening. Growing impatient, Michael demands that Damien stop holding back and fight seriously. He unleashes a powerful strike, but Damien calmly responds that his blade will land first. A massive burst of force shakes the battlefield, and when the dust settles, Michael lies on the ground defeated. His father shouts for him to stand, unable to accept what he sees. From Michael's perspective, he feels as though he has lost everything. Yet as Damien stands in front of him, Michael wonders if they were truly equals after all. The grand hall fills with forced celebration as a banquet begins after the duel. Michael's father stands among the guests with clear frustration, loudly urging everyone to eat. The Duke cheerfully announces that there is plenty of food for everyone, claiming that a feast is always better with a full crowd. The guests respond politely, but the Marquis's anger casts a heavy atmosphere over the room, bitterly noting that Michael surrendered without even drawing his sword. He cannot decide whether that outcome is fortunate or humiliating. Nearby, Damien quietly observes the situation. He realizes the Duke invited the defeated family not out of kindness, but to subtly mock them through the celebration. Even so, Damien notes that their main objective has been accomplished. Their victory in the duel secured the Duke's position and made it unlikely that the Lyon-Bloom family would challenge them again anytime soon. During the banquet, Michael approaches Damien and politely asks if he may sit with him. He expresses sincere respect, which surprises Damien. Michael explains that his entire life he believed no one like him existed, yet Damien proved to be someone far beyond his expectations. Damien finds this strange, considering his conflict with Michael's brother earlier. Michael admits he still does not fully understand what happened during their duel, but even without properly crossing blades, he sensed the difference between them. His instincts told him that Damien existed on an entirely different level. In that moment, Michael realized the world was far larger than he had imagined. Damien offers him some advice. While Michael's talent is exceptional, he warns him not to grow arrogant. According to Damien, there are likely several people within the Empire who surpass Michael's ability. Damien admits he once believed he was unmatched as well, until he encountered a mysterious warrior who proved otherwise. Michael then asks a direct question. Does Damien live by that same belief? Damien immediately gives a confident answer. No. He calmly declares that he still considers himself the greatest. Michael is startled, pointing out the contradiction. Damien clarifies that since he is as strong as Michael, Michael should not grow conceited. Michael accepts the remark with a quiet promise to remember it. Soon, the Duke and Michael's father approach their table. The Duke smiles and remarks that it is nice to see the two young warriors getting along after such a fierce duel. He then explains that he has finished negotiating with the Marquis about Damien's reward for winning the duel. Damien had originally been promised access to the Marquis's treasury, but the Marquis was reluctant to grant it fully, forcing the Duke to settle for another arrangement. Hearing this, the Marquis reacts sharply and defends the value of his family's treasury. Turning to Damien, he admits that he cannot forgive what happened to his son Erwin, but given the current setting, he will overlook it for now. He also offers a brief apology for previously sending knights as a show of force. Damien notes that the apology feels incomplete, especially regarding the young boy involved in the earlier incident. The Marquis then explains that while he cannot open his treasury to an outsider, he will allow Damien to choose a single item as both compensation and reward. He presents a small box containing a ring crafted by the White Tower. The ring possesses dimensional magic and can store up to 100 kilograms of items, making it extremely valuable. Although Damien finds it less than the original promise, he accepts the reward and thanks the Marquis. The Marquis declares the matter settled and proudly adds that his house still possesses many fine weapons. Michael casually asks if that includes excellent swords. At that moment, Damien suddenly remembers something important and makes one final request. He asks for a bow instead. The Marquis is surprised by the request and asks why Damien would need a bow. Damien calmly explains that it is meant as a gift for his brother's upcoming wedding. The journey home begins beneath a wide sky as Damien and his companions travel along the open road. A senior knight riding nearby interrupts and respectfully informs Damien that sunset is approaching. He suggests setting up camp for the night, and Damien agrees. As darkness falls, the group stops in a clearing and lights a campfire. The escorting knights from the Duke's household quickly take their positions around the camp, forming a protective perimeter while the others prepare a simple meal. The cook warmly invites the escort knights to share the meal, but they politely decline, explaining they must follow their own routine and will eat separately later. While the group relaxes around the fire, one of the escort knights approaches Damien and says he will scout the nearby woods as a precaution. Damien thinks it is unnecessary, but the knight insists and disappears into the darkness. Not long after, a heavy and threatening presence settles over the campsite. The air grows tense, and Damien immediately realizes something is wrong. A man steps out from the shadows and introduces himself as Sir Ernest Horwitz. Damien demands to know why he has appeared, but before the situation can settle, two more figures emerge. Some of Damien's companions suddenly begin feeling dizzy, as if affected by a strange power. Despite the pressure, Damien remains steady, resisting the mysterious influence. The attackers seem intrigued by his resistance and speculate that he may possess an unusual ability. Their leader shows clear curiosity about Damien and suggests capturing him to study this strange trait further. With weapons drawn and hostile intent now obvious, the calm night around the campfire is shattered. Ernest speaks up, filled with hatred. He declares that this will be his final meeting with Damien and vows to destroy him in revenge for Lady Chelsea. Damien calmly draws his sword and mocks the man, reminding him how he once trembled in fear before Lord Gale. The remark enrages him. Meanwhile, the girl questions why Damien remains so calm while facing three opponents alone. Damien responds by identifying them as black magicians from Ireland, likely officers. The girl is startled and demands to know how he knows this. Damien casually replies that he simply has good ears and tells them their threats will not intimidate him. Without warning, Ernst releases his aura and charges forward. Damien meets the attack instantly, and a fierce battle erupts. In the middle of the fight, Damien corrects them. He is not alone. At that moment, another figure steps out of the shadows. A man appears and introduces himself as Sebastian Vincenzo, a middle-class knight of Duke Goldpixie's house. His arrival reveals the Duke's earlier plan. Suspecting that Ernest Horwitz might seek revenge for Chelsea's death, and knowing black magicians could also target Damien, the Duke secretly assigned Sebastian to follow and guard him. By keeping Sebastian hidden, the Duke hoped their enemies would reveal themselves. The strategy works, drawing the attackers out of hiding. Ernst steps forward with rage burning in his eyes and declares that anyone connected to Chelsea's death must pay. Sebastian tells Ernst to stop talking nonsense. Ernst arrogantly offers him a chance to walk away if he abandons Damien. Sebastian refuses without hesitation, questioning who Ernst thinks he is to make such demands. Enraged, Ernst reveals that he has embraced forbidden black magic to gain greater power. The cloaked magician confirms that the spell grants immense strength by consuming one's mana. As Ernst unleashes his full power, a terrifying aura fills the area, so overwhelming that even Sebastian struggles to comprehend it. Despite the danger, Sebastian firmly refuses to abandon Damien. Horwitz answers with a massive surge of energy, striking straight at Sebastian. Sebastian wasn't able to dodge the strike, and takes a direct hit. Damien is stunned to see the sheer power of the strike. At that moment, Sebastian looks at the attack and simply says, "Impressive." Everyone is stunned because he actually managed to withstand it. Sebastian admits that he never expected to get through such a simple attack, but he wasn't careless enough to let himself get taken out that easily. Even so, he knows he can't keep this up for much longer. So he tells Damien to head to the ducal residence and request reinforcements. Damien immediately picks up his butler and prepares to leave, but Rebecca and Horwitz quickly chase after him, with Ernest rushing in as well. However, Sebastian steps forward and tells Ernest, "He's my opponent." Meanwhile, Rebecca and her captain block Damien's escape, and Rebecca mocks him for being foolish enough to run away alone. Damien smirks and tells them they're the foolish ones because he deliberately lured them here. With Sebastian watching, Damien wouldn't be able to fight at full strength, so he needed to draw both of them away and take them down quickly before returning to save Sebastian. Hearing that, Rebecca and her captain burst out laughing. The captain tells Rebecca to stay back because he'll handle Damien himself. He releases his terrifying aura and transforms into his true demon form, finally revealing his identity as Yuri, the captain of Uran. Damien immediately realizes that he was right to suspect Yuri was someone high-ranking, and he also figures out that both Yuri and Rebecca belong to the Frenzy sect. Yuri is surprised that Damien knows about them, but before he can say much else, he suddenly appears behind Damien and lands a powerful punch. Damien barely manages to block it, instantly realizing that Yuri is definitely above the middle class. Yuri keeps throwing attacks from every direction, forcing Damien to constantly dodge, but when Yuri suddenly closes the distance and throws another punch, Damien activates 10,000 flow insight and slips past the attack. Yuri refuses to let up and continues attacking relentlessly, but Damien finally draws his sword and lands a devastating strike. Yuri is badly injured, yet his wounds immediately regenerate. He laughs and explains that Damien's attacks are useless because his incredible regeneration comes from great dark magic. Damien simply smirks. He admits that he was worried this fight might end too quickly, but this actually works out perfectly because now he can finally use his full strength. Meanwhile, Ernest is completely overpowering Sebastian. Sebastian can barely keep up, constantly dodging the incoming attacks, but somehow he's still holding on. Ernest admits that he's impressed and even respects Sebastian for surviving this long. But Sebastian says he feels ashamed to be pushed this far by someone whose strength comes from dark magic. Ernest only smirks and tells him that no matter what he does, his defeat is inevitable. Sebastian realizes Damien needs to hurry because if this battle continues much longer, things are going to get ugly. Back with Damien, Yuri unleashes a powerful mana burst, but Damien casually parries the attack. Yuri freezes in shock, and Damien doesn't waste the opening. He rushes forward and unleashes a barrage of strikes, overwhelming Yuri and sending him crashing to the ground. But Yuri quickly notices something is wrong. His regeneration isn't working anymore. Damien explains that his regeneration comes from dark mana, and dark mana isn't something they can use endlessly. Meanwhile, Rebecca finishes preparing her spell. Yuri grins and tells her to take Damien down. Rebecca releases the spell, summoning a Death Knight that charges toward Damien at incredible speed. Rebecca and Yuri are confident this will finish him because that Death Knight is powerful enough to defeat even a high-class knight. But Damien completely overwhelms it, defeating the creature with ease. Yuri can't believe what he just witnessed, while Damien laughs and calls the supposedly terrifying spell nothing more than a joke. Then Damien stops holding back. He unleashes his own true dark magic, covering the entire area in a massive wave of black mana. Rebecca and Yuri are left speechless when they realize Damien can use black magic too. Damien calmly reveals that this is his 9th-tier spell, Abyssal Darkness, and with a single overwhelming attack, he defeats both Rebecca and Yuri. But just as he's about to leave, Damien remembers something important. He forgot to question them about Dorgo. So instead of wasting the opportunity, Damien uses necromancy to turn the defeated enemies into undead servants and orders them to reveal everything they know. Meanwhile, Ernest has completely overwhelmed Sebastian. Sebastian is severely injured, barely standing, and Ernest prepares to end the duel once and for all. Sebastian thinks this might really be the end, but suddenly Damien arrives and tells him, "You did well." Ernest sees Damien and smiles, saying he no longer has to waste time searching for him. Damien calmly replies that Ernest is the one who's about to be defeated. Furious, Ernest charges at Damien with his spear, but Damien immediately destroys the source of dark magic empowering him. The moment the source is destroyed, Ernest's enhanced power disappears, his body returns to normal, and he collapses from exhaustion. Damien realizes that destroying the source of dark magic causes the magic itself to disappear, which explains why Ernest suddenly lost all his power. Sebastian asks what just happened, and Damien explains that it seems to be a side effect of the black mana dissipating. Sebastian then asks about the other 2 dark mages, but Damien says they should return to the Duke's residence first. He'll explain everything there. When they arrive at Duke Goldpixie's residence, the Duke realizes that his earlier suspicions were correct and thanks Sebastian for protecting Damien. But Sebastian immediately corrects him, explaining that Damien was actually the one who saved him. Hearing this, the Duke thanks Damien for taking down the dark mages. Damien brushes it off, saying they weren't particularly strong, and adds that he suspects defeating them also caused the dark mana inside Ernest to disappear. With the matter finally settled, Damien says he'd like to leave and return home. However, the Duke asks him to stay a little longer because there's someone he wants Damien to meet. Just then, Agnes walks into the room and casually greets him, saying, "It's been a while." Damien freezes in shock. A few moments later, Agnes and Damien are sitting together, and Damien admits that he never expected Lady Agnes to show up. Agnes explains that when she heard Damien was here, she volunteered to come because she wanted to meet him herself. She then gets straight to the point and asks whether Damien discovered which group the Black Mages belonged to before he defeated them. Damien knows telling her the truth could cause a whole lot of trouble, so he plays dumb and says he didn't hear anything about their affiliation. Judging by their abilities, he adds, they didn't seem to belong to any organized group. Agnes wonders if those dark mages might have been connected to Euron, but Damien immediately asks why she's so interested in Euron. Agnes explains that she's hunting a black mage affiliated with them, a mage responsible for countless deaths who is known only as the Reaper. Her expression hardens as she explains that nobody even knows the man's real name. Damien listens carefully, but he knows there's more to this than she's saying. He can't exactly tell Agnes that he already knows the Reaper's identity. In the distant future, that very mage will earn Dorgo's trust, rise all the way to the position of Legion Commander, and lead an army of undead onto the front lines, where they'll wipe out thousands of people. Agnes then tells Damien that if he ever learns anything about the Reaper, he needs to inform her immediately. Damien agrees and says that's all the information he can provide for now, so he politely asks if they can end the questioning there. Agnes agrees, and Damien finally decides it's time to leave. The scene then shifts to the Haxon estate, where Abel notices his sister standing outside again and asks what she's doing. She explains that she's worried about Damien because he's a genuinely kind person, yet he went to the Duke's mansion alone, and the knights there might give him a hard time. Abel, however, has a completely different opinion. He figures the knights are probably the ones who should be worried about Damien. Just then, Damien and Victor return, and Damien's sister immediately lights up when she sees her brother safely back home. Damien doesn't come back empty-handed either. He starts handing out gifts from the Duke's residence, first giving his father the latest novels and poetry collections, which instantly puts a huge smile on his face. For his mother, Damien brings back some beautiful furniture, and she absolutely loves it. Then it's his sister's turn, and Damien reveals a grand piano personally crafted by Master Buckley. Her eyes practically light up the moment she sees it. Finally, Damien turns toward Abel and pulls something out of his subspace. He asks his brother, "Wouldn't you like Lady Olivia?" Abel nearly short-circuits from the shock and points out that Lady Olivia doesn't even know he exists. Damien tells him not to worry because he already has a plan. He heard that Olivia's family will soon host a dueling tournament for her birthday, giving Abel the perfect chance to meet her. Abel immediately points out the obvious problem. He can't fight in a duel. Damien simply tells him not to worry because he'll fight in Abel's place. The scene then shifts to a restaurant, where several adventurers are gossiping about the upcoming dueling tournament at Count Cooper's estate. Apparently, whoever wins will have a chance to earn Lady Olivia's favor, and they soon mention that the heir of Viscount Haxon, Damien, will also be participating. The rumors about him are already spreading like crazy, especially the story about how he defeated the Lionbloom heir without even drawing his sword. Hearing this, a girl named Sophia suddenly starts laughing, while her fiancé Jackson dismisses the whole story as complete nonsense. One of the knights nearby overhears him mocking Damien and steps forward, demanding that Jackson apologize. Jackson doesn't even bother answering. Instead, he throws a powerful punch that sends the knight crashing down. The other knights immediately rush in, but Jackson takes them all down just as easily. Frustrated, Jackson turns towards Sophia and complains that he doesn't understand how this happened. Somehow, Damien has become more famous than him. Sophia tries to comfort him, saying these fools are simply too blind to recognize his greatness. But secretly, Sophia is thinking something completely different. Until recently, Damien was practically a nobody, and now he's suddenly become famous everywhere. She can't help but wonder what kind of ridiculous scam Damien pulled this time. The next morning, Damien's mother and sister are already worried because he only just returned, and now he's heading out again. Damien reassures them that everything is fine, while his father apologizes to Abel for never realizing he had feelings for Lady Olivia. He even admits that Count Cooper might have arranged a marriage proposal if he'd known. Abel tells him not to worry about it, but Count Haxon still reminds both of his sons that winning the tournament would be great, but staying safe is more important. He also reminds Abel about the favor he asked him to do. As the three brothers leave, they travel toward the Cooper estate, and after several hours of complete silence, Victor finally admits that things are getting awkward. Damien feels the same way because he has absolutely no idea what to talk about. Victor eventually breaks the silence by asking Abel how he even fell for Lady Olivia in the first place. Damien gets curious too and asks for the story. Abel hesitates before explaining that it happened 4 years ago when he attended a social gathering for Western nobles with their father. Olivia happened to be there, wearing a beautiful dress, and the moment Abel saw her, he was completely captivated. Victor immediately points out the obvious, basically saying, "So you fell for her because she's pretty?" Abel doesn't really have a comeback for that. Damien, however, knows there's more to their relationship because in his previous life, Abel and Olivia eventually became deeply connected. Unfortunately, Count Cooper rejected Abel's proposal back then, and it wasn't even a simple rejection. He looked down on both Abel and the entire Haxon family. Damien remembers how badly things turned out in his previous life, and as Abel's older brother this time around, he's determined not to let history repeat itself. 3 days later, they finally arrive at the Cooper estate, and Victor is stunned by the sheer scale of the birthday celebration. Before they can enter, a butler stops them and asks where they're from. Victor explains that they're from the Haxon household, and the moment the butler recognizes Damien, his attitude changes completely. He immediately apologizes for stopping them and introduces himself as Connor, the head butler of the Cooper household. Connor personally escorts them to their rooms and tells them to call him if they need anything before leaving. Victor is absolutely loving the luxurious room, but Damien isn't buying it for a second. The Count, he remembers, wouldn't normally treat them this well, so Damien suspects this is just a calculated move to get on his good side now that his reputation has skyrocketed. Damien decides to head outside and look around, and Abel wants to come with him, but Damien tells him to stay behind and rest. Abel refuses, reminding Damien that he promised their father he'd keep an eye on him. If Damien looks like he's about to cause trouble, Abel says he'll have to stop him. Damien laughs it off and tells his brother to relax. But the moment Damien steps outside, trouble practically walks straight into him. He bumps into Sophia, and Jackson immediately rushes over, grabbing Damien and demanding that he apologize. After a moment, Jackson finally recognizes who he's dealing with. Sophia also acts like they've met before and casually says it's been a while, but Damien looks at her and simply says he has no idea who they are. Sophia is completely stunned. Damien pushes Jackson's hand away, and Abel and Victor soon arrive to find out what's going on. Abel immediately recognizes Sophia and explains that she's actually Damien's former fiancée. That instantly brings back Damien's memories of his previous life. Sophia had humiliated him when she broke off their engagement, openly declaring that she would never marry someone as useless as Damien. Remembering that makes Damien furious, and he nearly charges at Jackson on the spot. But he also remembers how their previous confrontation ended, with Jackson defeating him effortlessly. That memory only makes him more determined not to repeat the same mistake. Sophia then mocks Damien for pretending not to know her and asks why he's so embarrassed about their past. According to her, Damien is still the same loser he was back then. Jackson starts laughing, clearly enjoying the situation, before stepping forward and offering Damien a handshake. He seems to think he'll teach Damien another lesson, but the moment their hands meet, Jackson's expression completely changes. Damien effortlessly overpowers him and sends him flying through the air before he crashes to the ground. Damien casually apologizes, saying he couldn't control his strength. Sophia immediately rushes toward Jackson, worried about him, but Jackson gets back on his feet and angrily draws his sword. Just before he can attack, a mysterious cloaked man steps forward and releases a powerful aura, ordering Jackson to stop. Damien is surprised that the stranger knows who he is, while the cloaked man tells Jackson to quit playing around and come with him. Jackson tries to argue, but the moment the stranger releases even more pressure, Jackson immediately backs down and follows him. Damien watches the group leave and jokes that things are getting boring now that everyone's leaving. But the cloaked man suddenly stops, turns around, and introduces himself as Jacques Noir. He tells Damien to remember his name because the two of them will be meeting again soon. Damien smiles at the mysterious warning and realizes that things might finally be getting interesting. After Jackson returns to his room, he immediately asks Jacques why he stopped him from attacking Damien. Jacques is already pissed and reminds Jackson that he told him to stay quiet and behave, asking if Jackson seriously thought those orders were a joke. Jackson quickly apologizes, but Jacques explains that if he hadn't intervened, Damien would have defeated him. Jackson can't believe it, but Jacques insists it's the truth. He doesn't know exactly what kind of power Damien possesses, but one thing is certain. Damien is someone Jackson can't handle right now. Jacques tells him to be extremely careful around Damien and, more importantly, to stay focused on winning the tournament. Jackson asks why winning the tournament matters so much, and Jacques responds by releasing a powerful aura that immediately shuts him up. He explains that winning the tournament and building a connection with Lady Olivia are both essential to achieving his greatest goal, reaching the rank of master. With that, Jacques orders Jackson to focus on preparing for the tournament while he investigates Count Cooper and the other contestants. After Jacques leaves, Sophia rushes into the room and asks if Jackson is okay. Jackson assures her that he's fine, but inside, he's furious and has no idea what Jacques is planning. Still, Jackson convinces himself that once he surpasses the middle class, he'll find a way to deal with Damien himself. The day of the tournament finally arrives, and all the contestants gather at the estate, immediately turning their attention toward Damien when he walks in. Before the competition begins, Count Cooper welcomes all the esteemed guests and thanks them for attending. Abel is completely captivated when he sees Olivia, while the Count announces that the tournament will last 2 days, with both individual and team matches. The first match will begin in just 1 hour, and the announcement gets the entire crowd fired up. Count Cooper then tells his daughter to smile a little because the entire event was arranged for her birthday. Olivia simply replies that she never asked for any of this, so she isn't particularly interested. Soon, the first match begins, and it's a team battle where the participants must hunt down powerful monsters. Jackson happens to be on the same team as Damien. The moment the battle begins, everyone is stunned by how powerful the monsters are. A massive troll lands a single, devastating hit on a knight, sending him down instantly, and the entire audience realizes this isn't going to be some easy tournament. The crowd starts cheering for Jackson as he charges toward the troll and lands a powerful attack, but Jackson quickly discovers that the monster can regenerate its injuries. He retreats for a moment, realizing that trying to take down the troll alone would be a terrible idea. If he works with the other participants, however, they might actually have a chance. The other fighters begin attacking one after another, slowly creating an opening. Jackson immediately takes advantage of it, rushing forward and landing a decisive strike that finally defeats the troll. The crowd erupts in excitement, and Jackson is ready to enjoy his moment. But before he can even celebrate, another troll suddenly appears behind him and attacks. Jackson is caught completely off guard. He tries to block the strike, but gets overwhelmed and sent flying into a wall. Seeing this, Damien finally decides to step in. Jackson thinks Damien is an idiot for trying to fight the monster alone, but Damien doesn't even hesitate. When the troll throws a massive punch, Damien activates his inside ability and effortlessly dodges the attack. He then launches himself into the air and takes the monster down with a single devastating strike. The entire crowd goes wild, completely stunned that Damien defeated the troll by himself. Abel proudly cheers for his brother, and soon even the other spectators, including Count Cooper, join in. Damien casually looks toward Jackson and asks, "Why are you struggling so much against a troll?" Jackson's face immediately darkens. Later, everyone gathers back at Count Cooper's estate, and Damien and Abel arrive dressed in formal clothes that make them look completely different from the usual fighters. Abel asks when Damien even had time to prepare such an outfit, and Damien casually explains that he got it from a famous boutique. The noble ladies immediately start paying attention to Damien, and Jackson becomes visibly annoyed by all the attention. Even Sophia can't help staring, clearly impressed by how handsome Damien looks. Soon, Count Cooper arrives with his wife and thanks everyone for participating in the martial tournament and helping celebrate his daughter's birthday. He hopes all the contestants will perform just as well in tomorrow's matches, but before the feast continues, he announces the grand prize. He reveals a mysterious artifact known as the Heart of the Spirit. Damien immediately recognizes it and is genuinely surprised to see such a valuable treasure being offered as a tournament reward. Jacques, meanwhile, quietly smirks because he knows the artifact has finally appeared. Count Cooper explains that the Heart of the Spirit protects its owner and can heal them, making it an incredibly valuable treasure. Everyone is stunned that such a priceless artifact is being given away as the prize. Damien, however, realizes that the Count probably doesn't understand the artifact's true value. To him, offering the Heart of the Spirit for a relatively simple tournament is almost ridiculous. Now Damien is genuinely interested in winning. As the feast begins, the nobles start lining up to greet Count Cooper and present their gifts. Some bring expensive cosmetics made by alchemists, while others offer rare gemstone necklaces. Damien quickly realizes what's happening. The competition to win Lady Olivia's favor has already started, but he knows a wealthy count won't be impressed by ordinary gifts. Jackson is one of the first to step up, presenting Count Cooper with an expensive elixir. The Count seems genuinely impressed by the gift, and then Damien and Abel approach. Count Cooper immediately recognizes Damien and praises him for his impressive performance earlier that day. Damien notices that Olivia still doesn't seem particularly interested, but he's confident that things will change once she sees Abel's gift. Damien announces that he has brought something specifically for Lady Olivia, reaches into his subspace, and pulls out an elegant bow. Both Count Cooper and Olivia are completely stunned by the unexpected gift. At first, the other nobles look at the bow and dismiss it as nothing special. Even Count Cooper says there's no way his daughter will like such an ordinary gift. But then Olivia surprises everyone by asking to hold it. She tests the bow herself and immediately realizes something is different. Damien already knows Olivia's hobby is hunting, so he understands that if you want to win someone over, you first need to figure out what they actually care about. Olivia examines the bow and realizes it's made from a minotaurus horn. Damien smiles and confirms it. Jackson is stunned because defeating a minotaurus alone is far beyond what a middle-class martial artist should be capable of. Olivia then notices the craftsman's mark and identifies the creator as August, the infamous master craftsman. Count Cooper is shocked because August is considered the greatest craftsman in the entire kingdom. One of his shields had even sold for an absurd price, so Count Cooper can't believe Damien would give away something this valuable. Olivia, however, points out that she's the one receiving the gift, so it's hers, and she sincerely thanks Damien. Damien quickly clarifies that the bow was actually obtained by his younger brother Abel, who worked incredibly hard to acquire it specifically for her. Olivia becomes curious and asks how Abel managed to get his hands on such a valuable weapon. Damien suggests that she hear the story directly from Abel, and Olivia agrees. Abel steps forward and politely introduces himself, finally getting the chance to speak with the girl he's been crushing on for years. Meanwhile, Jacques watches the situation unfold and realizes his plan isn't going as expected. He never anticipated Damien would be this capable, and now Damien has earned the favor of both Count Cooper and Lady Olivia. If things continue like this, the Hexen brothers could steal both the tournament victory and Olivia's favor right out from under him. Jacques decides he's done sitting back and will handle things personally, ordering Jackson to follow him. Damien notices the two leaving and simply smirks. The next day, everyone arrives at the arena for the next round. Damien looks toward Abel with a knowing grin, making Abel wonder what he's thinking. Damien teases him, saying it looks like he and Olivia are getting along pretty well, so he should keep it up. Abel thanks Damien for helping him, but Damien brushes it off, saying that's what an older brother is supposed to do. Soon, the second round begins, and Damien easily defeats his first opponent. Abel proudly cheers for his brother, but then Olivia suddenly approaches him wearing a cloak. Abel is surprised to see her and asks what's going on. Olivia tells him that Damien is in danger. The story then flashes back to the previous night, when Olivia was thinking about her conversation with Abel and realizing that she actually wanted to talk with him again. But before she could enjoy that thought for long, her father summoned her. Count Cooper then dropped a massive bombshell. Olivia was going to marry Jackson. Olivia immediately refused because she barely even knew the man and couldn't understand how her father expected her to marry him. Jackson was just as confused because Jacques hadn't told him anything about the arrangement either. As Olivia argued with her father, Count Cooper reminded her that she was the eldest daughter of the Cooper family, meaning her marriage was ultimately his decision. Olivia demanded to know why this marriage was suddenly so important, and her father explained the deal. Jacques was a powerful middle-class warrior, and he had promised to support the Cooper family once the marriage was completed. Among the great noble families of the West, only the Gold Pixie and Lionbloom families currently possessed middle-class warriors. If Cooper successfully gained Jacques as part of the family, they would finally have enough power to stand alongside those two houses. But that wasn't even the best part. Jacques had also promised to provide the Cooper Knights with advanced techniques and mana cultivation methods based on the methods used by masterclass warriors. Even Jackson was stunned because he had absolutely no idea this agreement existed. Jacques then asked Count Cooper if he would accept the proposal. The Count admitted that the conditions were more than satisfactory, but there was one major problem. Jackson was an unknown knight with no reputation, and after hosting such a prestigious tournament, taking an unknown fighter as his son-in-law could damage the Cooper family's honor. Jacques calmly told him not to worry because Jackson would win the next day's match. Count Cooper pointed out that wouldn't be easy with Damien participating, but Jacques had a disturbing answer. He said that if the Count helped them just a little, Jackson would win, and even if Damien happened to be defeated, all the Count had to do was stay out of it. Everyone is stunned by how openly Jacques is suggesting that Damien could be taken out. Count Cooper thinks it over before finally agreeing. Back in the present, Olivia tells Damien and the others everything that happened. Damien didn't expect Jacques to make such a bold move, but he remains surprisingly calm and says it won't be a problem. Abel points out that Jacques is a middle-class martial artist, but Damien tells him not to worry because he already has a plan. He heads back into the arena, ready to finish the tournament. The moment Damien steps inside, every other participant turns their attention toward him. Count Cooper then explains the final rules. There will be only one winner, and whoever remains standing until the very end will become the tournament champion. Damien immediately finds the rules suspicious because there are practically no restrictions at all. Then the match begins, and instead of fighting each other, every single participant, including Jackson, immediately charges straight at Damien. The night before the match, Jackson confronts Jacques, furious and demanding to know why he's going this far. Jacques immediately tells him to keep quiet and do as he's told. If Jackson were already strong enough, Jacques wouldn't have needed to make such an extreme proposal to Count Cooper in the first place. Jackson argues that he genuinely loves Sophia, but Jacques reveals the truth behind their relationship. He only allowed Jackson to date Sophia because he needed the support of the Russell barony. Thanks to that connection, Jacques obtained the sword manuals he wanted, and now that the barony has nothing left to offer him, there's no reason to keep pretending. Jackson asks why Jacques is willing to go this far, and Jacques simply says he's doing it for a wish he has never been able to fulfill. Jackson still begs him to reconsider because he loves Sophia, but Jacques tells him to stop being naive. Sophia already abandoned Damien the moment she decided he wasn't good enough and chose Jackson instead, so what's stopping her from doing the exact same thing to Jackson? Jacques even points out that Sophia's attitude suddenly changed once Damien started becoming successful. Then he hands Jackson a special ring artifact capable of boosting his abilities. Jacques orders him to use its power and defeat Damien in the tournament. Jackson realizes there's no way he's going to change Jacques' mind, so he reluctantly agrees. Back in the present, Jackson hears Sophia cheering for him from the crowd, and that gives him even more motivation. He decides that today he's going to prove that he's better than Damien. But Damien is completely unfazed by the army of opponents surrounding him. He effortlessly dodges their attacks, then drops one of the knights with a single punch. Damien looks around and tells the others that numbers won't be enough to defeat him, so they should stop holding back and attack together. Jackson is stunned and starts wondering if Damien has already surpassed the low-class martial artist rank. Two knights rush Damien at the same time, but Damien calmly draws his sword and uses his technique to take them both down with ease. Abel and Victor immediately start cheering even louder, while Count Cooper and Jacques watch in disbelief at just how strong Damien has become. Soon, only Jackson remains. Frustrated and desperate, Jackson decides it's time to use the artifact Jacques gave him. The moment he activates the ring, something strange happens. The defeated knights suddenly begin getting back up, while Jackson's own power surges dramatically. Damien is genuinely confused and wonders what the hell is going on. Jackson proudly explains that it's called Mana Rampage, a power granted by the artifact his master gave him. The ring causes the mana of everyone around him to go berserk, giving him a huge advantage. Jackson declares that this time, he's finally going to teach Damien a lesson. But then, without warning, the rampaging mana suddenly disappears. Damien bursts out laughing and says he already expected something like this. He realizes Jackson can only rely on dark magic to increase his strength, and that kind of trick simply won't work against him. Damien immediately closes the distance and lands a powerful kick, sending Jackson crashing into the wall. Damien confidently tells him that dark magic doesn't work on him. Jacques is completely stunned and can't understand why Mana Rampage failed. He never imagined Damien could withstand the artifact's power. Damien, meanwhile, finally realizes the bigger picture. He figures out that Jacques worked together with Count Cooper to get rid of him. Jackson refuses to give up and suddenly charges forward with an aura-infused sword. Damien easily dodges the attack, while Jackson insists that he'll defeat him using his true strength. Damien responds with another powerful strike, and when the dust settles, the entire arena is surrounded by dark mana. Everyone immediately realizes what they're seeing: dark magic. Count Cooper is horrified because a knight has openly used dark magic right inside his territory. His butler rushes over and asks what they should do because the audience is becoming restless, and if word of this reaches the church, the entire situation could become a disaster. Count Cooper immediately orders him to stop the match and make sure everyone keeps their mouths shut so the incident doesn't spread. Damien, however, realizes that everything is going exactly according to plan. He notices that Count Cooper has already left the arena and follows him. Meanwhile, Count Cooper is furious at Jacques for betraying him and realizes that without direct proof connecting them, he can simply deny any involvement. But just as he's thinking about how to escape the situation, Damien suddenly appears. The Count is shocked and asks what Damien is doing there. Damien tells him to stop pretending like he doesn't know what's going on. Count Cooper plays innocent and claims he has no idea what Damien is talking about, saying they'll discuss the matter later. But before that can happen, three knights move in to stop Damien. Damien doesn't even hesitate. He defeats all three in an instant, then turns toward Count Cooper with a calm smile and asks, "Do you remember what you wanted to say?"